The girl was saddened. She turned to Axel Grant. She explains that it must be an accident. She read in the note to her that starting today, he would become a novice porter. He realized that he would become a porter. The girl began to explain that the god of job change had chosen the profession of porter for Mr. Axel, and she was really sorry because there are 1,000 other professions. Axel understood, and he doesn't need an apology. He thanked Miko for their class change temple's work. The girl was on her knees and understood that the guy was upset. He continued that even though he had been demoted to the rank of an excellent Dragon Knight, but he didn't want Miko to think about it. He even felt better. He finally got rid of the Dragon Knight helmet. The girl doubted that Axel was going to give up the Dragon Knight, such an excellent profession. She had never heard of a Dragon Knight becoming a porter. Axel was surprised by her words, and the girl confirmed it. First, he defeated the Dragon God who controlled the Dragon Knights. It's unheard of that he could continue to be a Dragon Knight. There was nothing to be done about it, because the Demon King had to be stopped. The girl asked in surprise if he had become a Dragon Knight using the Royal Dragon Knight helmet. Axel told her that it was an ancient treasure that belonged to the royal family. After some thought, he confirmed that this was the same slab. And once again he asked what class he had, which confused the girl again. The girl doubtfully confirmed this. He asked a little angrily if this profession was that bad. Miko replied that there are useful skills, but the ability to, Axel interrupted, suggesting that they were so bad that she was so depressed. He wondered where he could see the skills and status after changing his profession. The girl handed him a paper with specifications. He looked at the paper and realized that he really didn't know the rest of the skills. He didn't know what the transportation bag was doing. The girl began to explain to him that there is another dimension in the bag. It will fit much more than it seems. Previously, they tried to measure it by pouring water, but it never succeeded because the measurement simply expanded tenfold. Axel realized that these abilities were easier to use in everyday life than the skills of a Dragon Knight. He looked at the status and saw nothing. Miko said that Axel's change of profession was such a surprise. Maybe the god of professions was mistaken. But you could see in the paper that there was an E rank luck. She remembered that all the stats were S rank while working as a Dragon Knight. The girl blushed and began to cry. She felt guilty because it was so great, and Axel probably thought the same. The guy approached the girl and began to calm her down and asked her not to worry about the past days. Besides, this class doesn't need to fight at all, and he doesn't like to fight, and he didn't like the battles themselves. Porter is a quiet profession, and he likes it better. He asked Miko not to make such a gloomy face. She agreed. Axel got up and repeated again that he had changed his profession and acquired new skills and needed to visit the city. The girl asked if it was necessary to call a carriage. The guy replied that there was no need to worry because he would have a companion with him. The girl asked again. Axel noticed the Dragon Queen, Baselia. She, in turn, was very much waiting for her husband. Miko was surprised because Axel rides the Dragon Queen. But even though she calls herself the Dragon Queen, she's still just a kid. The guy said he was coming home, and besides, it was time for Miko too. The girl said that the corrected status would be delivered later, and they said goodbye. Baselia turned to Axel because she was tired and wanted to become human. He replied that if she was so tired, she could come right away in human form. She confirmed, but today was the last day her husband was a Dragon Knight, and she wanted to see him in dragon form. At the same time, the dragon changed his appearance to a girl. Baselia finished the transformation and noticed that Axel's pocket was shining. He noticed it too. The pocket was shining because the level had increased. The girl praised her husband because he is growing fast in his position. Axel was surprised as they walked a little way. He had heard about it, of course, but it was too easy for beginners to level up so quickly because it was too easy to level up over the distance traveled. However, he feels motivated when he thinks that he can acquire new skills in this way. He wanted to raise himself a couple of levels, and he offered to go for a walk today because he was counting on his wife's help. She was glad and said that if he needed a helping hand, he could only tell. They reached the house. The girl said she was sweating and wanted to take a bath. We'll invite Axel to take it together, but he refused. She prepared to take a bath, saying that she was the first. The girl was enjoying a hot bath while her husband decided to check the bag. Axel opened a large room with objects. It looks like an ordinary bag for transportation, but here are the items of any size and quantity that can be stored in it. He tried things bigger than the bag itself. It worked. The guy was very surprised, and after a while the room was empty. No wonder there was another dimension inside. He decided to pack everything in their house in it. After a while, there was nothing left in the house. He found the maid's clothes and thought about the fact that he had seriously bought something like this before. Axel remembered Miko's words that other porters had experimented with water before. Previously, they tried to measure space by pouring water, but it never succeeded because the dimension simply expanded tenfold. He decided to try pouring water into it. Going into the bathroom, Baselia was very happy, but she thought that something had happened. Axel was surprised that she was still here. The girl was waiting for him, and the guy wanted to do the experiment that Miko was talking about. Baselia was surprised, wondering what he wanted to do with the hot water left behind. Axel filled the bag with water and was stunned, because there were already 5 full baths. Unimaginable capacity. The girl found the maid's costume in her bag, and it was dry, even though it was in a bag full of water. He realized that the things inside didn't interfere with each other. In addition, the weight of the enclosed items is completely invisible. The girl asked him again what the water was for. And the water that was kept clean, so there shouldn't be any problems with hygiene. If you pour drinking water in there using a container, he will be able to drink it. Baselia came out of the bathroom, felt fresh, and saw the glow of the table again. Axel raised the level to the 3rd. The girl noticed that the growth rate of the porter was too fast. She noticed that it was a fairly simple profession, and the guy thought that it couldn't be called a profession because he didn't even work. The girl said it was her dream job. This should make their journey much easier. The girl was glad to think about the trip because so far she was in debt to her husband. She would like to travel, taking care of him. For this, she learned to keep an eye on the house. At this time, Miko received a new spreadsheet. She had been waiting for it for a long time and was surprised that Axel's status was wrong. It had never happened before. The god of class change is also wrong. Another book fell into her hands. Initially, if you change your profession, your abilities are reset to 0. Porter, this is his new profession, the value of attributes should have decreased. God of class change, an outrageous newcomer has been born. Axel cut up the vegetables as Baselia addressed him. She said the shipping bag is perfect for carrying groceries. There was a knock on the door. Someone asked if this was Axel's house. The guy came out, saying that this was him. The guest said that it was a long time ago and whether he remembers it. The guest took off his hood, and Axel remembered that this was the hero of the holy sword Fang. The guy was very happy to be remembered. He had heard that Axel had changed classes. He had come to celebrate his profession change, and at the same time grabbed the best drinks from the capital. Axel thanked her shyly. And I remembered that he was a military general in the capital, and he, in turn, did not visit it often. Fang was embarrassed. He's wearing a military advisor's uniform right now, so he didn't have time to visit him. But now, everything has changed. As it turned out, Fang rents a hotel near his house. Axel said that it looks like the life of military personnel is really difficult. Fang replied that this was not the case. He could live normally now, but once again apologized for the incident where he had to save him. He came today to look at Axel's new profession. He was really happy. Baselia approached Fang, recognizing him as well. They haven't seen each other for a long time. The girl wondered how he was doing after the battle with the Demon King. Fang laughed and asked not to be reminded, while complimenting the girl. But Fang still hadn't heard the main point. He was wondering if the class change was successful. Axel said that he got a good profession. The guy was delighted and wanted to know which one had fallen out this time. Fang began to assume that he had acquired the profession of a swordsman mage, or maybe a martial artist, or a beast lord, who seemed to be almost equal in strength to a dragon knight. He wondered if he had guessed right. Axel approached him and said that he was absolutely wrong because from that day on, he was a porter. Fang was shocked, and he asked for a repeat as he thought he had misheard, but Axel repeated his words. Fang was horrified because porter is a beginner's profession. Fang wanted to storm the temple of the god of changing professions, but he was stopped and asked to moderate his ardor and take his time. Or rather, what's the point of it? Because it's strange that Axel, the strongest of the Dragon Knights, got a profession for beginners. He definitely must have another profession. But Axel denied it, and he didn't need any help. Fang wondered if it was possible that the god of class change had made a mistake. Unlike Axel, he didn't have the power to compete with the gods. Anyway, he should at least ask. Axel put his hand on Fang's head and told him to calm down. After all, even a porter can develop his abilities. The guest asked if he wasn't a beginner. even if it's the weakest profession. It's easy to fix this with various skills he's learned in the past. It was rumored that Axel raised several levels on the very first day. But all the same, a porter is considered a profession with extremely poor skills, which only the god of class change thinks about. The guy reassured Fang by saying that he didn't feel any flaws. With a sly smile, Fang decided to show how weak he had become. He decided to duel with the faceless Dragon Knight. This was the first time Axel had heard of such a thing, and the guy just came up with a nickname. And he said that he never took off his helmet, even after completing the mission. Axel replied that he couldn't show his face because of the Royal Dragon Knight helmet. Baselia and Fang were happily waiting for the duel. They decided to leave immediately. The two guys were standing in front of each other, former Dragon Knight against the hero of the Holy Sword. The girl was bored, she was waiting for the beginning. Fang was never praised as a hero, and all this time he was striving to become like Axel, to be proud of having climbed to the top and surpass it. Axel, after switching from the strongest profession of Dragon Knight to the weakest, now that his stats have dropped significantly, he won't be a strong enemy for him. Axel called for a rockfall. Rocks were falling on Fango, and he was worried about why this was happening now. Quite a large area disappeared under the Holy Sword Fighter. This is the subsidence of the terrain. Fang thought it was an accident and fell into the pit screaming. Baselia asked if her husband had won. Axel held out his hand, asking if everything was okay, and the fighter kept thinking that this should not have happened. There was a voice that wanted to deliver a letter from Miko. It was a person from the class shift. He was holding a letter in his hand which said that if it wasn't opened by Axel, it would turn to ashes. Axel thanked the postman. Fang thought that this was a correction to Axel's mistaken profession. The Dragon Knight said that rather, he cared too much about his profession as a porter. Fang was angry because he had moved from the upper class to the basic class. But Axel and Baselia were already looking at the new chart. Somehow, all of his stats have grown. Fang asked to see his status, even though he understood that it was uncivilized. Axel said that everything was fine and let me see. Several emotions changed on the fighter's face. He was shocked by the high scores. He also doubted whether these values were normal for a porter. All S-class abilities and luck were generally BAD, and it dawned on him why the collapse had occurred. The characteristics resemble the Dragon Knight. There was a slight difference, but almost everything matches. Fang also asked in surprise what happened that the stats are almost like a Dragon Knight. But Axel didn't know himself. There was something else in the envelope. My wife knew that it would be like this. It was amazing to get the luck of the EX rank. Just incredible luck. Axel agreed and said that he was really very lucky. They left Fang, and he was trying to attract attention to himself. He was thinking, good luck, high status, but there was something more important than all of this. He called out to Axel because he only found out his status now, but he was still raising his level like an ordinary person. Axel asked if something was wrong, but it was actually becoming low level. He had no guarantees that he would remain as strong as before, and now, having started everything from the beginning, he just calmly continues to raise levels. Fang smiled as he said what kind of person. He probably would have continued to raise his level indefinitely, even with very weak skills. All of his past strength gained during these times was gone, as if after a reboot. He wondered if he could also move on without getting discouraged by so much minor loss. He would have been able to do it if he had been in the same position. Fang laughed, and Axel wondered what had happened. The guy apologized because the Dragon Knight was the kind of person who would stop at nothing. He proved to him that Fang respected him for a reason. Axel didn't know about respect, but if he was praising him, he didn't mind. Fang confirmed enthusiastically and asked to wait for him. He was going to follow him with even more enthusiasm than before. Axel realized that the fighter was clearly in a good mood right now. But Fang was as tough as he was. Someday, he'll be like that too. Fang turned to Axel, asking for some time to talk. The knight remembered that this was what he had come for from the very beginning. The fighter was surprised that he noticed. Axel remembered that Fang had come to him, but he had a hood on his head, and he was still wearing it. The fighter began to explain that something had happened, and it was necessary for, the knight interrupted, saying secrecy. Fang laughed, because there was nothing to hide from Axel. He decided to listen to him, and he was wondering what had happened. But, in fact, he did not come to him to find out how his profession had changed. He wanted to hear an opinion on one issue. More specifically, since Axel is a porter with such powerful characteristics, maybe now is the time. Fang decided to tell the porter something. He wanted to ask him to take out the fourth princess of their country, Princess Luna. This is a request not only from a military general, but also from a hero. Axel listened attentively to him, and the fighter continued, asking if he could respond to this request. The porter replied that it was good to have such a class, but to have a princess right away. He had never seen her in his life. Fang agreed, and they mostly talked to the king all the time. Axel asked where she was from and where she needed to be escorted. That is, whether everything will be fine if he takes up this case. He just got a porter class today. It was generally normal that he was given such a task on the very first day. Fang assured him that there would be no problems. After all, it was him, Axel. She was currently staying at a hotel near his house, and she needed to be escorted to the Windy City, which was several dozen kilometers away. Axel asked doubtfully if he had ever been to this city. Fang agreed because he left the capital a few days ago. While they were driving to the city, they were attacked by monsters. The magic carriage was damaged, so they had to fight their way through by force. That's why they arrived at the star capital late. Princess Luna was currently resting at the hotel next door, but they needed to leave. Time was running out. Axel and Baselia looked at the girl in surprise and were amazed that this was the princess. The girl introduced herself, saying that her name was Luna Ririum and she was the fourth princess. She was pleased to meet them, and she asked them not to be shy when contacting her. Axel agreed, saying that he would only be happy to do it, which surprised the princess. The porter decided to ask if the princess wanted to go to the Windy City tonight. Luna agreed, because in 3 hours a meeting with nobles from other countries will begin in the Windy City. The meeting is related to the food situation in the country, so she needs to be there on time. The main task at the moment is to rebuild the country. Failure to comply with this requirement will result in significant losses. After all, after the start of negotiations, they will no longer be able to do anything. Axel asked Fango again, saying, in other words, the princess wants to go to the neighboring city at night because she has no right to be late for negotiations. Fong agreed, repeating that they start in 3 hours. Usually, everyone uses carriages to get there, but unfortunately, there was a massive outbreak of goblin orcs near them. Horses will make too much noise and attract attention, and it also seemed that there was no magic carriage in this city. Only in the capitals there is such a modern mode of transport. They were thinking about hiring experienced adventurers in this city, but time was running out. There was no need to delay, and besides, you had to be strong enough to protect the princess. That's why Fong wanted her to rely on Axel. The porter smiled, understanding everything. Fong asked again if he could, and if he would comply with the request. Axel had no choice but to agree. If it will benefit the country, then there is no reason to refuse. So he could assume that he agreed. Fong thanked him. He has powerful defensive magic in his arsenal, but to be honest, he's not very good at protecting people. Axel agreed because it was a good point. Once upon a time, he sneaked into an enemy castle. There was a sword fight. Fong decided to use defensive magic, and an explosive shield saved him from his enemies. Everything was in smoke, but the enemies appeared in even greater numbers. He relied on the shield, but because of his carelessness, he was surrounded by enemies. He launched a second attack, hitting his enemies, 1 against 1,000. Axel interrupted him, saying that he had already told me. Fang agreed, but continued, overdoing his defensive magic. He ran out of magic power and ran out of steam. Fong fell down, but when he opened his eyes, he saw a huge dragon that was turning back into a human. The general was surprised. A hand reached out to him and he flew away. Axel had to save him. Fang interrupted him because he had already apologized. Besides, he was very embarrassed himself. The boy smiled, remembering the old days. Luna turned to Fango, asking what kind of person could fight alongside the hero of the Holy Sword. The fighter said it didn't matter, because Axel was stronger than him anyway. The girl was surprised, and if so, then Axel was the faceless dragon knight that Fang wanted to see so much. The girl enthusiastically asked Axel if he was really the faceless dragon knight, and immediately began to look at him, seeing what he really looked like. At first, it seemed strange to her that this man was not affected by her charm, but if he was really a faceless dragon knight, then everything becomes clear. Charm was a skill of her princess class, and by activating it, all nearby creatures are seduced. Bashfully, Baselia asked, "Are they tempted?" Axel did it too. The girl began to explain, if the absolute resistance of the dragon knight is too high, then the skill will not work. Axel was confused by the fact that the princesses have skills. Fang confirmed it. Most of those who have the princess class have skills. Baselia thought about it and repeated, charm. Due to her high activity in working with society, Princess Luna has developed her charm skill to grade 4. Her methods are really amazing. She gets rid of rivals, pitting them against each other, squeezing the maximum benefit out of this situation. For this, she was nicknamed the Charming Princess or the Destroyer of Factions. It was unimaginable. Axel doubted if this could be considered a negotiation, but yes, the most ordinary negotiations. Some bring special jewelry that can protect them from the charm, but it still doesn't help. Axel said they were so wrong. Meanwhile, Baselia thoughtfully repeated the negotiations. Fang said there was one flaw in her strength. The porter asked again, and got the answer, that this is one of the reasons why they don't hire adventurers. Charm is a passive skill, so it attracts not only adventurers, but also monsters. Adventurers, in a fit of emotion, cannot focus on escorting. They confess their love for her, and the princess asks them to stop. Monsters will also be no exception, attacking the moon. Of course, there is a possibility that the person who was under the influence of the skill will undergo a pleasant hobby. Axel understood everything. It's too dangerous to be accompanied by guys who have fallen under the spell. Baselia realized that being a princess is very difficult. Luna confirmed. That's why she asked Axel for help. Fang ended his story by saying that these are the advantages and disadvantages of so much great power. Their country's negotiating ability is really strong. Axel noticed that he was just like the princess. Luna was embarrassed and said that he was praising her and could see right through her. The girl confusedly turned to Axel, saying that he was even more amazing than she was. After all, she has always charmed people unintentionally, and now she is happy that she has finally met those who are not affected by it. Luna took the porter by the hand and leaned on him, saying that he was a real dragon knight. She was really happy. Axel was afraid that she would misunderstand, but he was no longer a dragon knight. She also lovingly said that she had heard about the class change and was interested in a new profession. And when he heard that he was a porter, he was taken aback. That reaction again. Fang asked Luna not to worry because Axel is not an easy porter. The princess was curious, even if he was at the beginning of his profession, but his absolute resistance should be of a high level. Axel confirmed and said that for some reason it was at S rank, so everything was fine. The princess was surprised. Fang understood Princess Luna's confusion because Axel did not succumb to her charm. His S-rank resistance was ridiculous, especially for a beginner. Where did the faceless dragon knight disappear to? Axel told Fango that he should have warned her in advance. He got down on one knee and greeted the princess. This is his first assignment, and he will deliver her to the neighboring city safely. He just wanted there to be no worries and waited for Luna's answer with a smile. The one with the loving eyes said she trusted him. She asked me to take care of her. Axel told Baselia that this was his first assignment, so he would do his best as a novice porter. And he waited for the confirmation of the words. Baselia agreed, and they left. They decided to start guarding Princess Luna. Fang checked the area around the city. It was still full of goblins and orcs. Axel was no longer a dragon knight, so he couldn't use his fighting or riding skills. The porter thought it was quite possible. Baselia said that the scent of the dragon knight's skills is very faint. Because of the contract, she could feel the power of his skills, but they were barely felt. They smelled very faint. Axel calmly agreed and asked if he hadn't said that he couldn't use the Dragon Knight skill anymore. Fang agreed and said that he would no longer have those long-range dragon attacks like in the good old days. The porter said that Fango was talking about a dragon skill he used to possess called Dragon Starfall. The effect of the spell is as follows. He throws spears, and they split under the influence of magic, and hundreds of enemies are trapped under a hail of spears. The skill perfectly demonstrates itself in a fight with a large number of enemies, just like now. But no matter how much you lament what you can't use it. We used the fastest transportation method. Axel thought about it and asked Fang if he was sure he could use defensive magic to the maximum at the moment. The general was surprised, but he thought he could. But the effect lasts only a few minutes. He couldn't cast her for a long period of time, so he asked for his help. Axel had no problem with that. After all, if he uses it, they will easily take the princess to her destination. Fang was surprised, but asked if he had found a transport. Axel has already found it, but it will be a little dangerous. He wanted for the princess to make a choice. Surprised, Luna asked what she should choose from. Of all the possible options, there were only two. First, they will go ahead and destroy the goblins that stand in their way, because they will have Baselia and Fang with them, so there will be no problems. But they won't make it in time. The second option, they would definitely arrive on time, but it would be a little dangerous and scary, and he would also need time to prepare. Luna chose the second option without listening to it. She didn't care what would happen there. If it is in the interests of the country, it will withstand everything. Axel praised her. The girl immediately confirmed the words, because the princess does not need to be told twice. He didn't have time to explain the details. They needed to act. A forest teeming with goblins and all sorts of entities appeared in front of the girl's eyes, which made scary noises. Luna was confused and seemed quite worried. The group was standing near the forest. As expected, they have already gathered. Baselia turned to Axel. It seemed to her that there was someone else there and assumed that this was their leader. Even this has tightened up. Baselia and Luna opened their mouths in amazement. The princess grabbed onto Axel's clothes and looked at him pitifully. The porter asked Fang if he was ready. Look at this former Dragon Knight, even if he has high stats. But how can he stay calm on the first day after class change? Fang began to make a call, saying that there was no problem. He had just completed a circle for absolute magical protection. This is the hero's special magic, absolute protection, which strengthens the body and guarantees complete safety. Axel was surprised that she knew a lot, but that was all he could give to others. Fang himself has dozens of blessings and divine protection techniques. But absolute defense is the only skill of the hero of the Holy Ball, which is superimposed not only on himself. Axel looked at the princess seriously and asked her to undress. Luna was very confused by his request, but agreed. Baselia was confused, asking if he was okay. The princess confusedly said that this was her first time and asked to be gentle. Baselia was already a little angry thinking about what she was talking about. The charming princess was enchanted. The main thing was not to think about it. Fang closed his eyes and tried to pull himself together because he's a hero. Baselia was worried about what her husband was thinking. Axel was taking off his jacket at the time and asked if negotiations would begin immediately after arrival. If the clothes used at business meetings get dirty, then this will be a problem. So he decided to lend her his coat. It will be more reliable. Luna kept thinking that it was in the interests of the country and she would withstand everything. The words flashed through her mind that the princess did not need to be told twice. She was really good. After taking off his clothes and putting on Axel's jacket, the sounds of goblins could be heard very close by. They began to surround them. Fang said to leave them to him and asked him to move on. The princess was wondering what Axel was going to do. He told her that everything was fine, although the goblins had arrived a little earlier than he had expected. Baselia felt that it was time for a transformation. There was already a dragon in the girl's place. Axel said to get in. Luna reminded him that he wasn't a dragon knight and how he was going to ride a dragon. But even though he couldn't use his skills, no one said that he had forgotten how to ride. Luna excitedly said that no porter had ever ridden a dragon before. Axel pretended to be surprised and said that then he would be the first and called the princess to follow him. He put the moon face down on his lap because no one else is able to touch Baselia. So he's riding on a dragon and the moon is riding on it. He meant that she should hold on tight. He pulled her towards him. Fang said they had to hurry before the goblins descended. Axel thought Fang would figure it out, but even he may have unforeseen problems. Luna hugged Axel tightly, wrapping her legs and arms around him. The porter repeated his words so that she would hold on tight and not fall off. And then he gave the command to Baselia to take off. The princess finally realized that Axel's tactic was flying goblins on a dragon. The porter thought that they might be misunderstood a little. The guy leaned back, and the girl said his name. She was amazed at how boldly he held her body at such a height. Axel asked with displeasure what she was mumbling there and whether she was watching her actions, because she could easily fall. The porter took out ropes and tied them tightly around their waists. As he had expected, after the disappearance of the Dragon Knight's skills, he could no longer control the dragon as before. So it was quite difficult to stay on Baselia at the moment. He hugged the girl again, who kept repeating how much strength it would take to hold back. He couldn't control the dragon after losing his Dragon Knight skills. That's why he needs to hold on to Baselia with his own strength. The dragon was their queen, flying with incredible speed, although, of course, it won't do much harm to his body. After all, thanks to Fang's absolute protection, he wouldn't get hurt, much less die. Luna hugged Axel, realizing that he was holding on by himself, and she would try to hold on to him tighter. Baselia is not flying at full speed. After all, if it accelerates to the maximum, it will break the bones of the average person. The princess was worried. She was worried if everything was okay with Axel. But he asked me not to worry. That's exactly what protection was for. The girl also remembered about Feng, because they left without him. Could he have done it alone? The swordsman confidently said that he could do it, and asked to leave him. Axel smiled and said he had no doubts about him, and he would be fine. The porter asked Baselia to move out again. She said she would try her best. Axel hugged the princess, telling the dragon that he was counting on her. When gathered together, even goblins become dangerous, so they had to fly over their heads no matter what. Baselia soared upward, leaving streams of wind behind her, so much so that the ground beneath it came out. The goblins were taken aback, and so was the princess. Axel was smiling. They flew off into the distance. They arrived in the city. Baselia asked her husband if he was okay. He replied that everything was fine, and looked at the unconscious princess. Baselia was horrified, but Axel only said that he hadn't done anything. It seemed to the girl that her soul was leaving her body, and wondered what they should do. The guy reassured her that Fang's protection was still in effect, so she would wake up on her own soon. But she said she was in a hurry, so we'll have to wake her up in another way. He wanted to do artificial respiration. Baselia tried to stop him, because she was flying too fast. All the responsibility lies with her. She'll do it herself. Axel looked at her in surprise, telling her to try it, and he would take a look. The girl put her hand on Luna's cheek and exhaled, starting to do artificial respiration. Tearing herself away, she looked at the princess, who opened her eyes, and Baselia jumped back. Axel noticed that she was awake. Luna started saying that he attacked her when she was sleeping. She's absolutely fine. The princess asked him what he had done to her, and he replied that it was artificial respiration, and Baselia had done it. Luna asked in surprise. And the guy handed her clothes, asking her to get dressed because they got there. But the girl was embarrassed, saying that it was her first time. Baselia got angry because if she didn't hurry, she would be late for the negotiations. The girl ran off shouting that she could do a lot until she got married. The couple waved after her, wishing her good luck. Axel and Baselia were sitting at the breakfast table. The princess wished them good morning and asked if they could distract them for a while. The porter asked if the negotiations were over. Luna said that, thanks to him, they had a huge success, and thanked him. Axel said that the negotiations went on longer than expected. He thought that something had happened. The princess was surprised, because they only stayed for 20 minutes. This was due to a strange situation in one of the kingdom's factions. Axel, reading the newspaper, asked again. Luna started to explain. She found out that their kingdom had hired several people with the profession of monster tamer, who constantly placed monsters in my path. They were the ones who brought those monsters they met between Windy City and Star City. Someone really didn't want Luna to start negotiations, attracted more funds and opportunities to some incidents. Axel asked, "Are negotiations really that important?" But this was the only chance to get more assets to rebuild the kingdom after the war with the Demon King. Although it's not surprising that someone tried to stop them. Baselia was eating ice cream and said with displeasure that next time she would have to keep their route to the kingdom a secret. But the princess continued, so she had to stay, but thanks to Axel, they reached a very favorable agreement. When Fong returned, he caught the others and got their confessions. Baselia understood why the fighter returned so late. Fong laughed and apologized for the delay. "I spent my time searching for a tamer hidden in the dark. But all the same, it seemed to him that Axel got there too fast. And it seemed to him that it was unfair for a porter to use a dragon. The porter, as he said, since they got there safely and concluded a successful contract, the rest does not matter." Luna agreed and realized that she needed to give him the reward. There was money and stones in the bag. Axel didn't understand what it was. The girl replied that it was a reward. 5 million gold and precious stones as compensation. She gave out the task, so it's somehow wrong not to give out a reward for success, to give out a reward for its successful completion. Axel did not know the market prices. After all, this was his first job, but there would definitely be no problems. 5 million, you can safely live on them for 5 years. Luna agreed and said that they would have suffered much more terrible losses without his participation. It seemed to him that the reward was too big. Fang agreed, because the porter receives a reward not only for the distance traveled, but also for the value of the items being transported. They were transporting Princess Luna. Naturally, the reward would be huge. Axel thanked him, but still he was worried if everything was okay. Fang and the princess agreed, smiling. Baselia turned to her husband because the status chart was glowing again. The level has increased again. Thanks to Fang and Princess Luna's request, he reached level 4. The girl was surprised at how fast he was gaining levels. Axel himself realized that he was gaining levels too fast. He was surprised too. The bag became much softer and stretches like rubber. Now it was possible to put large things in it. The porter agreed, since they can carry much more luggage than before, then there will be more work. Fang waved his hand, saying that if anything happened to them, they should tell him. He would immediately come to the rescue. Or rather, he will come. And once again, I wished you to have a good time. The couple thanked him again. Meanwhile, in the forest, people were talking. This strange situation was finally over, and now we can safely hunt relaxed people. It was a good place, located between Wind City and Star City, so there was always someone walking here. Someone agreed, but immediately turned to the girl, asking if she was a merchant's apprentice. The market is near the capital's gates. Axel was approached, and a man offered to hire him as a security guard. He said it was cheap. Axel asked in surprise, "Security?" The man asked if it was a porter's transport bag. And he looked like a novice, and it's very dangerous to take such people with you without protection. They could rely on him for your journey. The man offered a price of 10,000 gold. Axel was not interested in this proposal. He asked Baselia what she thought about it, but she said she wanted to be alone with her husband. The porter thought it was too expensive. The cities of stars and wind are not too far apart. The guy asked me to watch my words because this is a very dangerous road, especially for beginners like them. Recently, a low-ranking novice trader decided to ride unguarded in a personal carriage, but a demonic beast appeared out of nowhere. He doubted that the man had any bones intact right now. Axel thanked them for the advice, but they didn't need security. The guy gave up, but got angry because the guy wasn't even worried about what might happen to a beautiful, fragile girl. Axel was surprised by the rapid change in his attitude towards them. Maybe nobody needs the security services of local mercenaries anymore. Baselia laughed and said that the people in this town are really funny. She was surprised by the man's words about her beauty, but she put in a lot of effort to make this body not stand out among people. Axel said that her human body is really very beautiful. He called her a cutie. The girl was embarrassed and asked if he really called her cute. And if her husband said that, then he really liked her. Meanwhile, Axel had finished shopping and they could move out. As they walked through the forest, Baselia reasoned that this place wasn't as dangerous as they had been told. There was a cry for help. The couple turned around and thought it was the girl thief. She continued to beg for help while lying on the ground. A man came out, laughed, and apologized to the girl lying down because a novice was standing in front of him. This man was the hired guard. Axel asked him about it. A crowd of bandits with swords appeared in front of them. The leader of the bodyguard said that it seemed he would have to teach the life of one arrogant guy who dared to ignore his advice. The man grabbed the girl lying on the ground in his arms and decided to leave this job to his guys. Meanwhile, he could have had a lot of fun. One of the crowd asked if the boss was sure about this. After all, Axel was a porter, and he must have something to gain, but there's also a pretty woman in the package. The boss said that the porter only had enough money for a drink, and anyway, this game was for beginners like them. The bandits accepted the order from the boss. Baselia started to get angry because these people had ruined her wonderful walk with her husband. She shouted that she would let them all go to the shawarma. Axel tried to calm his wife down because after the fight with her, there would only be a sea of blood. He decided to take care of them himself. He wanted to test his abilities, and then the opportunity came up. Baselia thought she shouldn't interfere. Axel took the sword out of his bag. The robbers were surprised because good swords are now given to beginners. He thought they didn't need such equipment and decided to borrow it. Baselia decided to cover the rear. They all came at once. As a porter, he simply had to carry them to the city guards. The boss was holding Natalie Kaufman's business permit card in his hand. He realized that his prey was a girl from a great guild. He noticed that she was running slowly. 214. The man turned to baby Natalie. He had often heard this name in the guild. He thought it was funny, because she was weak, it was useless. The girl shouted that neither her father nor her grandfather would give him a penny. Not to a coward like him. The man sarcastically said that it was not up to her to decide, and it's not appropriate for a lady to scream at the top of her lungs. He treats her normally and is such a kind guy like him, even teaches the mind of beginners for free. He reached for the axe that was behind him and said that even though he was still green, when he got out of town he didn't know who he was going to take away or when he was going to disappear. He was wondering what the taste of a fading life was. His thief flew past the boss, screaming. He looked and was surprised. Axel only thanked for the advice, addressing a member of the Thieves' Guild. But he thought he should give such lessons in the city, in public, if he lives, of course. The boss saw the sword in the guy's hands and asked what he had done to his brothers. Axel just sarcastically asked, did he oversleep everything? The bodyguard was furious and demanded an answer, or the second option was to disappear, at the same time brandishing a weapon. But Axel, with a completely calm look, stopped his axe, pointing the tip of the axe towards the boss. The man was stunned, the guy retorted, but he had a bag for things, and it could only be a porter. He was wondering where such power came from. Axel replied that it was enough for him. He did not see the point in using even a percentage of his capabilities. The boss started to stutter. The guy thought of his idea and replied that he was a simple porter, nothing more, nothing less. He just wanted to remember the Dragon Knight's skills. Therefore, the man just had to either accept it or disappear. So, the big brother had to make a decision. Meanwhile, Axel was ready to strike. He shouted out the heavenly dragon bite technique. The man flew off and fell to the ground. Axel's face visibly changed as he held the sword across his body. It seemed to him, or his sword made a regular cut. Baselia came over and confirmed that it was a normal punch. Axel realized that he couldn't use his past skills. It seemed to him that everything should have worked, but in fact, he just waved his sword. The girl looked at the sword and said that perhaps because of the presence of her magical energy, the sword glowed a little. Axel asked her, does she think he can use the Dragon Knight skills later? It made sense. First of all, it was necessary to find a place where he, a beginner, would have a job. It was the first time someone had chased him and even tried to rob him. Baselia reminded him that by giving up his previous profession, he had burdened himself with a lot of problems. But there was another problem. They had to figure out how to get rid of these half-educated thieves. The Darkon Queen offered to just tie them up and leave them here, but he didn't like it. And he got the idea that they would put them in a bag. Baselia was surprised. Was he really going to carry them in his bag? Axel agreed because why not? They fit perfectly. He also turned to the merchant's daughter and asked if she was okay. After all, she was moaning as if she was injured. Natalie was surprised, but agreed. The porter was glad that she was safe, so they could safely go to the City of Stars. He asked her if she would return to the city with them. The girl agreed. She will be waiting for a new meeting and thanked for the rescue. Axel just said, I'll see you later. Natalie thanked him once again for saving her. He was glad that everything had turned out all right. The girl continued by saying that although most of the goods have sunk into oblivion, thank you that she is alive and her innocence is intact, and everything else can always be restored. The couple was already leaving. Axel wished to be careful and said goodbye. Natalie called out to him, asking if he was leaving already. He replied that there was no job waiting. Here it is, the City of Stars. Natalie couldn't thank Axel in any way, so as a merchant and a girl, she was interrupted by a porter who told her not to worry. Then a man ran into the girl shouting her name. It was her grandfather. When he found out that he was attacked by thieves, his heart almost stopped. He's glad that his granddaughter is okay. Axel felt a little uncomfortable. Grandpa hadn't seen his beloved granddaughter for so long, he wanted to hug her. He looked at the guy and asked, did this young man help his granddaughter? He saw the bag over his shoulder and realized that he was just a porter. Axel said he just became one. The man was embarrassed because he was a beginner who had just changed classes. Moreover, he became a simple porter. It didn't matter. Most importantly, he saved his granddaughter. The man introduced himself. He is the deputy head of the City Merchant Guild, Dort Kaufman. He apologized for not being able to thank him properly for his status, but he expresses his gratitude to Axel from the bottom of his heart. The guy asked me not to worry too much about it. Dort Kaufman didn't care how or for what reason, but he saved his granddaughter. He asked them what they wanted to receive as a reward. He will do his best. Axel apologized, but he wasn't up to it right now. Dort suggested that they have lunch together when he has free time. He would like to discuss something with him. Grandpa was pleasantly surprised and asked for their names. Another girl peeked over Dort's shoulder, and he repeated the couple's names and positions. He changed classes and wanders around, not looking for a permanent job, so he can't stay in the city of Zvezda all the time. Grandpa said that everything was clear to him. Axel and Baselia were the porters of the City of Stars. The couple said they went. They will be able to find them in the main guild building. The man said that they will be waiting for them at any time. And if they have problems, they don't have to be shy. Axel said goodbye and shook hands with Mr. Dort. And he thanked the guy again. The man and the girls watched the couple leave. Dort, standing on the stairs and looking at the couple walking away, repeated the hero's name. Then he came to the conclusion that it was quite good, and he asked what Marion, the girl standing in the hood, thought. She took off her hood and turned to Mr. Kaufman. She thought he was an interesting man. The girl was surprised that Axel, even though he became a porter, but their adventures only increased. More new acquaintances, more of everything, something like that. Baselia looked at Axel in surprise and said that the pocket was shining again. The guy nodded contentedly. Axel had a bag upgrade. The report card says that the transfer of people, according to the criteria, gave a result. The bag level has been increased. The capacity of the interior space has been increased by 100%. Durability increased by 100%. Reading the letter, Axel was surprised that there were also new functions for the bag. Apparently, he misunderstood something. We need to look into it in more detail. He was obviously pleased with this news. The guy did not expect that the ability to maintain the magical and vital energies of objects was added, thereby increasing their shelf life. Isolation from the external environment contributes to the conservation and accumulation of energy. This means that a living being or object initially possesses some kind of power. Then, after long-term storage, its original reserves are preserved, Axel reasoned. The guy said that now they can carry fresh food in the bag while traveling. Baselia was very happy about it. The girl asked if this meant that she could eat what her husband had prepared any time and anywhere. Sighing, Axel said that she was also thinking about food. Thinking about it, the guy said that, in addition, it seems to him that the range of things that can be worn has expanded significantly. Baselia, in response, said that it looked like they could now tolerate small animals and low-ranked spirits. But the most interesting thing is the preservation of heat, mana, and life. The demon turned to Baselia and asked what she wanted from them. He was very angry. "Steroids don't do you any good, but a lot of goblins have died from these teeth," said the big goblin. The goblin glared at Axel and said that it looked like he was not averse to eating them either. Axel landed a strong attacking blow on the goblin, which sent it flying away. Baselia asked why he was staring at her so intently. In response, Axel said that they would break through. The guy took out a saber and continued to attack the goblin. Axel said that due to the lack of skills, it would take a little longer, but then he had an idea. Axel wanted to check something out. He turned to his wife and asked her to put some kind of attacking spell in the bag. Baselia got excited and said an attacking spell, but she can't do anything except fire magic. The girl was worried that the bag might catch fire and harm her husband. Axel reassured Baselia and said that he had already conducted similar experiments. The girl calmed down and was ready to start. She began to put the magic of the great dragon's breath into the bag. Baselia put all her strength into it. The girl managed to do what she had started. Axel was surprised by this. He was glad that everything worked out. But then he remembered what Baselia had said about the bag catching fire. Axel attacked the goblin once again. He was confident. The guy moved directly to the goblin's mouth and started using Baselia's fire magic from the bag. This time, the attack was incredibly powerful, and the goblin was thrown very far away. Axel was angry and told him to go to hell. The guy headed towards the goblin again, using the magic of the dragon's cleansing breath. The demon growled. Axel was glad that it really worked. The bag's new magical energy retention ability allowed its flames to strike with all their might. He was standing with his back to the defeated monster. Baselia was standing in front of him, and she ran up to Axel, hugged him, and asked if he was okay. The guy agreed and said he would. The girl asked to let her check his body. After all, she couldn't control that flame. She felt guilty. Axel just praised her, saying that he couldn't have done it without her. Baselia snuggled up to him again, relieved by his words. But even she wouldn't be able to use her flame like that. The gentleman became stronger as a porter. Axel did not agree. This time they won only because of her. No other magic would have worked like that. He thanked her. The girl was very confused. What a blessing that she could be useful to him. She would do her best to get him up as a porter. Wind City, the guild headquarters. The man was calling for the vice president of Dort. He was trying to pass on information about what they had got their hands on. Dort asked, interested, what was in there. On the road connecting us to the City of Stars, they found the body of a dead demon. Kaufman asked again. A terrible creature of hell that killed a huge number of their soldiers during the war. A strong monster that only a squad of heroes can defeat. Dort was interested in the cause of the panic. This demon was completely incinerated during his lifetime. Kaufman asked again. Maybe it's the result of using a high-level fire skill. The man denied that they had ever encountered anything like this. Could it be that such a powerful magician appeared in the City of Stars? Dort said, we need to understand what we're dealing with. Maybe there's an answer in the City of Stars. Still, he couldn't imagine where such a powerful fire mage could come from. He remembered the recent couple and wondered who they were. They were just approaching the house, and Baselia was glad that they had managed to get here before dark. Recent acquaintances were standing near their house. Axel was approached. It was the priestess of the Temple of Professions, who was waiting for his return. Fang and the princess were also near the house. The guy was happy and said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Axel was at a loss. Weren't they supposed to return to the royal capital? But it seemed to them that he was paid too little, so they brought more money. The porter said it was more than enough. There was a bag of money in front of him. He didn't like it. It might be deserved, but doesn't Fang want to make more money himself? That's not really what he came for. He was wondering why Axel got this particular profession. Miko shouted that he was the epitome of honesty. But he doesn't even have the right to know such information. Fang was upset. Miko didn't care how brave, strong, and so on he was. She asked Axel how he was doing, and he replied that everything was fine. He accepted the situation as it was. He accepted who he has become and lives with it calmly. Fang was delighted with his self-control, but if anything, he knew who to turn to. He will do his best for Mr. Axel. The guy asked Miko if she didn't mind him knowing about his profession. She said that if that's what he wanted, then of course. The porter invited everyone inside. He will make tea for everyone. The tea was already on the table, and Miko said to take a look at it. She handed him the paper. Someone with big drooling teeth loomed over Baselia. The couple had a long list in front of them. It was a list of professions currently available to Mr. Axel. The guy asked why there were so many, and Baselia noticed that there are many excellent professions here. Axel didn't understand what that meant. It was the will of God to change professions. It seems that all the gods have decided to fix the problem with Axel's profession. There was a list of these gods. Baselia thought they were all going crazy there, and they say that the gods don't care about mortals. Miko said that when changing professions, the most suitable option is selected for each person, but if it has several equally high stats, then everything will be randomly selected. Axel was approached, asking if he had ever done anything other than work as a Dragon Knight. He became a Dragon Knight from the moment he was able to put on that helmet, and as soon as he took it off, a lot of work immediately appeared. In general, there wasn't even a chance. It was hard, however, to live. Mr. Axel originally had a completely different assessment system. One could say that he was new to ordinary professions, which meant that he could choose absolutely anyone. Many gods offered their own options. Arguments, fights, but to no avail. Such a scandal was caused because of his profession. In the end, they decided to just draw lots and drew the god-bearer. That god was very sorry that she was chosen. Miko didn't know how she was able to survive. Axel understood how he became a porter and asked why they didn't just change his profession. Miko was sorry. They are currently working on this issue. This phenomenon is very rare, but the gods responsible for the distribution are already trying to figure out the reason. According to the description, all the gods are just a bunch of buggers. Axel said it would be great if they could figure it out. Usually, for beginners, the characteristics are far from the S value. For a porter, a novice profession, his characteristics are simply exorbitant. And it just negated the whole concept of their system. The Temple of Professions had never seen anything like it before. And if suddenly this information becomes public, the perception of the porter profession will completely change. Fang said that if that happened, there would be an uproar on an incredible scale. Axel didn't want any of this either, so he decided to just do their job. It was a reliable way to raise the level, but it would grow quite quickly. Miko was asked if she thought it would be so easy to get up. He said he doubted it, although she was very interested in what he could achieve. But do not forget about one more problem. Soon the gods will descend from heaven during the festivities. Then he will be asked a lot of questions. Axel told me, which would be great if he could help the gods solve this problem. Mika was glad that he was willing to cooperate. If he has any questions, she will always be happy to meet at their temple. Miko said goodbye to everyone. Axel was thinking that he hadn't really learned anything yet, but at least it became clear that becoming a porter was an official profession change. Baselia hugged her husband, saying that it looked like the gods were afraid to contact her husband directly. He was glad that it wasn't some mistake of the god of changing professions. Well, it remains to sort out his duties and move on. Fong was surprised by Axel's calmness. If he was lucky, he would have one of the best professions in the world. Right now, the stats are even better than the Dragon Knights. He was satisfied with his current job. Everything was fine. Fang said that Axel is really amazing. He will try to become as unflappable as he is. Axel didn't think it was worth it. He gave the advice that Fong should just get stronger. He could always help with advice, so the guys agreed. The weather was fine outside, and the couple were sitting at a table. Baselia realized that it had been a long time since they had been so relaxed and full. The girl turned to her husband. She offered them to find a permanent job, otherwise now they are just wandering around the cities. Axel told Baselia that he was going to visit several guilds today and invited her to go with him. The girl agreed and took her husband's hand. She put his hand to her cheek and said that she was ready to go to the ends of the earth with him. She wondered why they needed a guild. Axel replied that even though we had completed a couple of orders, we were still newbies. That's why he thought it was better to learn the basics first. He didn't know much about the job of a porter. Axel wanted to learn more about his duties in order to gain experience. Last time one person helped him, he shouldn't rely on others every time. He had heard that there were vacancies in the Adventurers Guild and the Merchants Guild, but no details. That's why Axel suggested finding out everything about the Merchant Guild. Baselia understood everything and decided to help. Her dragon ears have excellent hearing. Therefore, she will not miss a single rustle if it is useful to her hubby. She will try her best. He laughed and was glad that she was always with him. And now they had to go find out everything about the porter's job. Baselia was very happy and called out, "Yes, Captain." The City of Stars, the Merchant Guild. Axel pulled the door handle and opened it. There were a lot of people there, who started whispering when they saw the couple. One of the crowd said, "Another low-level guys are here." Another one picked it up, saying with disgust that someone should tell them. Baselia realized that they weren't particularly welcome here. It really pisses her off when people laugh at Axel. People were looking at the couple. One said to see what kind of girl was with the guy. He wondered why she was with this weakling. Axel was surprised, but Baselia heard it and repeated it angrily. The guy pulled the girl towards him and tried to calm her down. He said there was nothing to worry about, let's call it part of the information gathering. Baselia was embarrassed and said that her husband was too kind, and he just asked not to listen to them, and that's it. And you shouldn't have worried so much about his reputation. Dort came out and asked what the fuss was about, but there was no fight. Axel was happy because the solution to their problems had come. The vice president was surprised by the couple's appearance. The people sitting in the guild asked what the old man from the Windy City was doing here, and someone remembered the old man's name. Dort said he wasn't that old. Moreover, the people were in one of the branches of their guild. One of the people asked in surprise, "Does this building belong to Old Man Dort?" Baselia was surprised. They came here without knowing who the owner was. People looked on irritably, and the old man continued, "They have many branches all over the country." People were apologizing. It was the first time they had heard about it. Someone didn't understand what was wrong with these two. Dort said that if the couple wanted to talk, they could go to the guest room on the second floor. The ladies were already shouting out how this porter knew the vice president personally. They wondered who he was. Maybe he's hiding his real profession. They thought it was necessary to apologize to them, otherwise they would have problems. Baselia was holding a cake in her hands and asked Axel to try the cake in his hands and the tea, because they were simply delicious. The guy said it was really delicious. Dort was glad they liked it. The last time they met, he couldn't thank them enough. The old man also remembered that, thanks to them, his profit had increased quite well. Axel asked again. Dort remembered that they had saved his granddaughter, and he thanked them only with words. In the Dort case, words are worthless because anyone can say them. Moreover, this is not their only achievement. Rumors spread like a tsunami. And thanks to them, people in the city realized that even newcomers can be local bandits, and now almost nothing is heard about the attacks. By their actions, they not only saved his granddaughter and helped him, they also rendered a considerable service to other merchants. Axel did not expect such consequences. Although Dort is not a merchant, he wanted to thank them on their behalf. Axel said that this victory over thieves was just luck, and he was flattering too much. Dort said they were too modest. He also said what their purpose was. The guy just said that he wanted to receive guidance from his colleagues in the profession. The old man said, "Of course, the Merchant Guild works closely with the Transport Guild, but given their purpose, it would be better for them to contact them." Dort put his hand on his shoulder and shouted, "No, he came to the right place. Because thanks to this, he will finally have the opportunity to repay him properly, using his connections." At first glance, it may seem that the Transport Guild is stuffy guys who refuse everyone, but he will present them on his own behalf. They went to the Transport Guild, whose services are used by many merchants, including them. A girl addressed them, saying, "Welcome to the Sagittarius Transport Guild." It was Marion who asked that these were the magnificent newcomers. Axel repeated her last words and asked if that was how they were introduced. Dort was embarrassed and said that they had not been introduced that way at all. But that's not the point. It was a representative of the Sagittarius Transport Guild, Marion Fuberg, who agreed to listen to them. The girl asked the guy if he had recently changed his profession and was interested in the details of a new job. She wanted to see what she was dealing with and offered to get to know each other better. She really wonders who Kaufman owes so much to. Dort explained that Marion is a professional, of which there are not many in their country, and this is her rite of passage. She said she was never wrong about people, and asked if she could study it. Baselia looked at the two of them in surprise. Axel smiled and opened his arms, and said that she could start. It looked like she had the ability to see the characteristics of 4328. Marion licked her lips and wished herself a good appetite. She threw Axel into her arms, and he understood how it was done. Baselia exclaimed in annoyance. The representative realized that it took her a long time, but she was pleased. Axel realized that she wasn't appreciating his abilities, but was just rubbing against him, like a cat playing with a mouse. Baselia awkwardly raised her hands. She turned to Marion. She just looked at her and licked her lips again. Then Baselia couldn't stand it and shouted at her husband. And he asked in surprise, this was the rite of passage. Dort replied that there are only a few professionals in the country. Axel felt the feeling that he was being deceived somewhere. Meanwhile, Marion hugged the guy and said, "Which is a little more." In the end, she decided to get down to business by pushing Axel onto the couch. She apologized for taking off his jacket and said she would start from above. Axel wondered what she wanted to find in his body. The girl said he was so nice. The guy began to clear his throat. After all, he came here for information and wanted to find out what about her. And anyway, he turned to the right place. This guild is considered the best in the country and all that. The girl didn't let him finish, saying that it looked like he was really special. Even though he was a porter, a beginner who can handle a gang of thieves without any problems. And now she decided to go lower. Marion said that she actually agreed to meet with him to help herself. She wanted to talk to him. Axel smiled and said that's how it was, and it seemed to him that she had formed a wrong opinion about him. 3036. Dort turned to the girl, asking her to stop fooling around and behave normally. After all, being able to read a person's characteristics, she doesn't have to touch him. The girl just laughed and apologized, because even the old man scolded her and they'll have to stop. She explained that he had caught her attention when they were talking about their new job to Mr. Kaufman. Axel realized that he hadn't even noticed her when he returned Natalie. Marion just said that in any case, if he had any questions, he could come to her in the cabin and she would help him, and if she is not in place, then he can safely turn to the young talent. To her colleague Kohak Wheeler, she was sitting at the papers, and she was so surprised to hear this that she dropped the papers from her hands. She awkwardly turned around and greeted him. Marion addressed her, saying that this was a high-level porter. Axel was surprised. He went over to Kohaka to help her. Axel collected some papers and handed them to the girl, who awkwardly thanked him. He understood what the pros looked like. It just felt like they were trying to trick him again. When the papers were transferred, they fell apart again. Marion said that she had another professional and several newbies at her disposal, but this shot could be called the closest to her, so it would be nice if they get along. Axel smiled and said there was no problem. Or rather, this guild is actually provided by only 2 people. Marion said they were always short of staff, even though they were doing a good job themselves. She sat on her knees and said that they were always happy to welcome new employees. The girl took him by the chin and said if he decided to join them, he could only tell her, and he could come at any time. Axel understood everything. And of course, they could always continue where they were interrupted. If he gets a permanent job, it will be easier to deal with everything. Baselia ran up to Axel and hugged him from behind. Marion just said not to be jealous. She didn't claim her man. The girl patted Baselia on the head and suggested that it would be better to become their girlfriends, and the guy thought that it was strange to be lured to work now. But he said he would appreciate it if she would give him a job. Marion continued stroking Baselia's head, calling her cute, hoping that the girl would join them too. Axel thought that Baselia wouldn't mind. I also hoped for their support. They would work in the ranks of the Guild of Porters. Axel thanked Marion once again for her help. She was confused and asked him to remember his offer. People in the restaurant were discussing that the Sagittarians were recruiting, as well as how difficult it was for them to enroll, because they had unrealistic challenges to join. They were wondering what kind of demon was able to get through them. Baselia turned towards the voice and asked her husband if they were talking about the guild they went to today. She didn't like these rumors. She was worried. Will he be treated well, as if he were new? Axel calmed his wife down and took a napkin to wipe the food from her cheeks. Those two didn't look like someone who would bully the weak. Baselia smiled and said that if her hubby likes it, then everything is probably fine. He has well-developed senses that allow him to cope with critical situations. But because of this, he did not understand the true danger of what was happening. For example, back then, in the battle with the demon, he decided to use the bag's capabilities. He remembered that they had to prepare for today's assignment. Marion greeted them. Kohake said it was a bit unexpected for her, but she sorted out all the assignments. And they only have to choose. She left the most difficult tasks for Marion, so there are mostly simple tasks. They can definitely do it. Axel thanked Kohaka and said that she had helped them a lot. She always does that, so it wasn't anything special. The guy asked not to be modest, because she even laid out the route for them. Kohaku explained this by saying that there are a lot of nooks and crannies in the city. She checked it herself and marked it on the map, so she thought it would be better to plot a route first. Axel thanked her. The assignment was to deliver 10 boxes to a research institute on the outskirts of the city. Axel decided to try to deliver the package via this route, and they decided on the final destination. There were 10 large boxes in front of them. Baselia was very surprised, and Axel decided to put all the boxes in his bag. Marion called out to them, and she was surprised that they had decided to carry it all at once. Axel didn't want to waste his time, but the transport bag was empty anyway. The girl was taken aback. She did not know that a transport bag could be filled with so much. Axel thought that this job was for low-ranking porters, and with each increase in the level, the capacity of the bag doubles. Or maybe she thought she couldn't fit that much into it. All the boxes were already in the bag. Marion and Kohaku were delighted. He was really able to take it all in one go. The representative asked Axel how he realized that he could put so many things in this bag. She had never seen anything like this with low-ranked ones. And the guy didn't even know. Maybe he was just lucky because of EX's luck. No matter what they have to face, they are ready. So he turned to the girls, and they set off on their first assignment. The girls wished them good luck. So, the task is to deliver 10 boxes to the Research Institute by morning. It was 11:30 a.m. Marion was wondering how many hours it would take Mr. Axel to complete the task. Kohaku didn't know, but she remembered that he had a good memory. But this city has a very complex structure. Marion leaned wearily on her arm, saying, "That's how." The City of Stars has a large elevation difference from the center to the outskirts. Isn't it exhausting to get to the suburbs? The city is primarily a trade center. There are always a lot of people here. The couple realized it too. Baselia felt like a lost child. Therefore, they will not be able to run along the main street, as in a morning clearing. The girl began to be pinned down in the crowd. Axel grabbed her arm and told her to hold on tight. The girl was inspired by this, and she agreed. After all, with her husband, she's at least on the edge of the world, but there's a cliff ahead. They jumped down from the roof with a cheerful look. Axel said, "Let's go," and Baselia asked her husband if he wanted to cut here. It was 11,002 on the clock. In addition, some facilities on the territory are separated by high walls. Therefore, you can only pass through a special passage. An experienced porter will get there in about an hour. Marion kept wondering how long it would take them. In other words, their task is to deliver the parcel within an hour. It's 11,004. Time was very limited. Kohanu asked if she had come up with this restriction, didn't she? It turns out that they don't need to be in such a hurry, and they can be late without consequences. Marion just replied that she didn't want to know what they were capable of. Their first task is not something that beginners can do. At this time, the couple was jumping on roofs and walls, jumping from different heights. The time specified in the request is just a guideline this time. There are no restrictions. It's 11,005. Axel was approaching the research institute. He jumped into the opening between the pillars. It's 11,006. He said the package had arrived and was awkwardly thanked. They asked him how he got here. Axel asked to sign, and the man signed a little confused. The guy thanked them for choosing their company, and the customer did not think that he would receive the order so quickly. He could not believe it. Everyone was wondering how he got here in the first place. People were paying attention to the fact that he was flying, and even so fast. They didn't believe that he was flying. Baselia was tired, but she repeated breathlessly that she would go to the ends of the earth with her husband. It was hard for her. They flew between houses. People looked up in surprise. Axel and Baselia watched in surprise that so many people were already watching them. There was a smile on the faces of the couple as admiring glances were directed at them. They were followed by admiring shouts that they were the best and coolest. Kohanu was thinking about going to help them. It wasn't that she didn't trust them. Marion said he might be strong enough to take on a gang of thieves, but that's another story. It requires completely different skills. Speed, not strength. It is necessary to be able to calculate the shortest and most efficient route to your destination. They have specially selected a task that they will fail. She hoped that today they would get an idea of the city and possible routes that they could easily navigate in the future. It's 11,007, that's why I gave them a map of the city. Axel realized that she was really easy to navigate. Marion ended her thoughts, thinking they were having fun. Meanwhile, it's 11,009 on the clock. They decided to focus on their work. Suddenly, the door creaked. It's 11,010 a.m. Axel came through the door, saying they were done. The girls thought they had forgotten to take something, but Baselia repeated, out of breath, that they were done. Axel handed over a receipt from the university. The wife lay down on her husband's shoulder, trying to catch her breath. Marion looked at the receipt in surprise and asked, "Already?" Axel remembered that Kohaku was doing the paperwork and handed the receipt to her. She asked if they got rid of the luggage. Baselia, sitting on the couch, said that they had delivered everything, and it was still quite difficult to keep up with her husband. She's very tired. In any case, the parcel was handed over by the staff of the institute. Here was the receipt. Marion still didn't understand how this was possible. It's only been 10 minutes. Kohanu checked the signature, and it was not a fake. Moreover, she received the message from the institute. It contained a message that 10 boxes had been received and thanks for the fast delivery, as expected. Special thanks to the couple who delivered. They were asking for a bonus. The couple looked at it cheerfully and laughed. Axel was surprised by this review, saying that this is sometimes written in reviews. Baselia was also flattered by such warm words. It was worth it. Marion still didn't understand how they had managed to do it so quickly. Axel thought about it and said that they didn't seem to be doing anything special. We just ran in a straight line and that was it. Marion took Axel by the neck and did not understand how to overcome an hour-long route in 10 minutes, because even running is unrealistic. The man who had addressed Madame Marion ran through the door. He saw some kind of animal running, and I was worried that this monster had touched the lady. Then he saw a couple and remembered that they were the two who had just jumped on the roofs. He asked them who they were. He asked Axel, "Is he a beginner from Sagittarius? It's so frustrating in terms of being talked about like a monster." Axel just smiled and said that everything was fine. He had been used to it for a long time. The man standing outside the door said that since everything was fine, he worked for the Merchant Guild, but this was the first time he had seen such a porter. He apologized for his manners. Turning away, the man realized that the novice Streltsov was definitely not a human being. Marion turned to Axel, asking if he had climbed the inner wall of the City of Stars. Kohanu thought they had taken the usual route. Axel explained that it was too crowded on the usual route, so he decided that it would be faster to cut across the roofs. The two girls repeated his words. Axel reassured the girls, saying that they had not damaged anything, and the permission of the city administration seemed to be there. They said that's not the problem. Marion asked him again if he was a beginner. He confirmed it. He remembered that something had helped them a lot along the way. It was a map that had proved to be very useful. He thanked her for it. The girls hesitantly said please, and the fact that the card really helped. It was far beyond the level at which they could teach anything. It looks like they've been introduced to a great man. Marion said that now she would not regard him as a novice. He asked in surprise, why? And the girl replied that he completed the request 10 times faster than usual. There's just nothing to teach him. In fact, she wanted them to explore the city's roads and back streets while she could keep them working hard. But it seems that those who rule the sky do not need to know the routes of the earth. After a couple more orders, Axel became famous in the city as a flying porter. He wondered about it, and Marion asked, why be so surprised? After all, his delivery method became very popular among children, and then the fame spread to the whole city. He didn't think it was the kids. In any case, it seemed to him that it was much faster to move across the roofs. But for some reason, no one does this anymore. Marion said it was dangerous. Dee asked him if he had never heard the phrase, born to crawl, he cannot fly. He had heard that she was called the Flying Fairy in the city. Axel asked her if there was no flying skill. Marion laughed. She could soar in the air, but she wasn't good enough to fly freely. But even if you master these skills well, they will not save him from injury and falls. She saw Axel landing in front of a guild headquarters. He was literally falling, and it's scary. Baselia said her husband was used to falling, and Axel replied that he was glad that his body was still strong. The bag was also shockproof, so the contents were safe. Marion said it had nothing to do with the porter's profession, and his body didn't look human at all. But in any case, she congratulated him. She had nothing more to teach him, and she wanted to finish what she had started. Guys, sitting together at a table in a Makatea. Axel thanks Marion and Kohaka. She notes that Marion was not only able to teach her, but also threw such a celebration about the completion of her studies. The table was sumptuously set. Marion was pouring drinks into glasses. Marion replied that they should be grateful to the great porter Axel Grant for his great contribution to their transportation industry. Marion continued by saying that Axel had helped her more than anyone. Besides, it had been a long time since she founded the Sagittarius Guild. Marion, with a slight blush on her face, added that it was a good toast. His bespectacled friend happily congratulated Axel and told him and his companion to eat well, because all the dishes in this restaurant are very tasty. Baselia happily thanked Marion Kohaku. She took the plate of treats in her hands. A sincere smile was visible on her face. Marion was holding an unknown scroll in her hand. She gave Axel a friendly look and informed him that this scroll was their gift to the young man. Marion added that this gift was in honor of his graduation and threw the scroll into Axel's hands. The young man thanked Marion for the gift and opened the scroll. Opening the scroll, Axel saw the welcome inscription, "Transportation, as saving human time." The guy was slightly perplexed. He asked Marion why he needed it at all. Axel was looking at the scroll, and Baselia snuggled up to him and began to look at Marion's gift with interest. Axel's mentor replied that his scroll was advice on transportation. She got them from the god of professions when she founded the guild. Axel continued to look at the scroll. He noticed that this scroll was received from God, and also informed his mentor that he did not really understand what was written here. Baselia was happily sitting next to the guy and eating the food set on the table. Marion decided to answer the young man briefly and said that wearing things is an opportunity to take care of other people's time. The sooner they deliver the order, the sooner the recipient will be able to use it. After hearing Marion's words, Axel seemed to understand what was going on. Marion got down to dinner and jokingly suggested that the guys ask God about it when he came down to Earth. Marion brought a plate of goodies to Baselia. Marion remembered that God had once told her that a being who could fully understand what was written would be able to control even time and thought itself. Marion suggested that these word games be temporarily abandoned. She also added that knowledge is always important, and this manuscript, it turns out, has a very pleasant effect. The presence of a pleasant effect attracted Axel's attention. Marion easily turned the glass in her hand. In response to Axel's interest, she informed him that if he read it, he would be able to instantly raise his level, but this only works once and only with porters. Her words greatly surprised the young man. He opened the scroll, and it said that if he could fulfill the carrier condition, he would be able to raise his level. Axel thanked Marion for giving him such a nice thing. The girl, slightly embarrassed, added that if Axel really liked the gift so much, then he should say thank you to Kohak. Kohaka replied that she did not deserve thanks, because she just wanted to help the young man improve his skills. Axel began to study the scroll. His EX Class 1 transport bag has improved. Marion was delighted by this improvement. She noticed that she had long wanted to start using the transport amount instead of this box. The young man also announced that now his transport bag has a new ability to transfer his past. Marion jumped up from her chair and asked the young man about his new ability. Axel replied that he did not understand what it meant to transfer his past. Marion looked at him in surprise. She strongly doubted the words spoken by the young men. The girl did not understand why Axel, having such a low level, could get something like this. Axel looked at the girls in surprise, who were in a state of confusion, and he asked them if everything was okay with his new ability. Marion expressed her uncertainty and clarified that it was all very strange. Axel asked the girl what exactly had confused her. Marion replied that only the best of the best high-level porters get this skill, and you can count such people on your fingers all over the world. She continued thoughtfully, saying that beginners can't get this kind of ability because this skill has only one effect. Axel continued to stare at the scroll thoughtfully. Axel realized that this skill gives him the opportunity to use abilities from his previous profession. He carries over some of Axel's abilities from his past. The young man assumed that the scroll was available because he already had a profession. Baselia said with satisfaction that her man meets all her expectations. She continued to eat her dinner. Looking at the inscription on the scroll about his new ability to transfer his past, Axel thought about how to use such a skill. Marion said that he can imagine the skills he had in the past by touching the transport bag. She also added that the number of these skills depends on the capacity of the bag. Axel confidently stood up and picked up his EX1 transport bag. He decided to test his new skill in action. Axel looked at the ground floor of the restaurant with a bag in his hands. There were two big men standing below who were clearly going to start a fight. They looked at each other haughtily. Axel looked down at the ground floor of the restaurant with a calm expression on his face. He asked what kind of noise it was without a fight. Marion watched the scene with interest. He replied that it was a local entertainment organized by the Ministry of Alcoholic Beverages. On the ground floor, there was a short curly-haired man who was the host of this event. He informed them that those who were proud of their strength had come to their restaurant today. He asked the audience to welcome their contenders for the show Dragon Dissection. The muscular man on the right was Thompson, a professional warrior, wielding a battle axe. And to his left was his equally muscular, mustachioed husband Chris, who was a fourth-generation melee wizard and wielded a long sword. Both applicants turned their gaze to the side and rushed away with wild zeal. Chris and Thompson were determined, and their faces were full of commitment. Both contenders simultaneously struck an unknown pillar. After hitting the pole, the applicants' weapons broke, and the show participants themselves fell to the ground. The presenter gloatingly stated that the applicants had been defeated, and also added that the participation fee would be doubled due to the fact that they had broken their weapons. Chris and Thompson shouted at the same time that this was very unfair on the part of the organizer. The men who took part in the contest threw their money to the presenter. One of them stated that the blades of the ancient dragon did not leave a scratch on these scales. Axel, confused, doubted that this could be called entertainment. He also remembered that one of the men had mentioned the scales of a dragon and asked Marion how the scales of an ancient dragon could be here. Marion replied uncertainly to Axel that this fragment had been brought here since the time of the war with the Demon King. The large black pillar turned out to be the scales of an ancient dragon. Axel thought about what he heard from Marion. After some thought, Axel said that there was definitely something inside the crystal. Marion continued by saying that the ancient dragon was very strong, so much so that even the Demon King bowed down before him. Axel asked his mentor if there could be something so dangerous here. Marion replied that initially it was just a bar, but one day a fragment fell from the sky and almost killed the owner. The owner of the place was the same short presenter. At the moment when a fragment of scales fell on him and pierced the floor and ceiling of his establishment, he was very scared and confused about what had happened. Marion added that because of this march, a lot of problems also fell on the head of the owner of the bar. Axel was looking at the scales of an ancient dragon. He asked Marion if they had tried to remove it. The girl replied to the young man that they had tried to do this many times, but besides the fact that the fragment itself was deep in the ground, there was another reason. It seems to her that the magic of position retention has also been applied to him. She drew the young man's attention to the magic circle on the floor near the shard. Marion clarified that since the scales of the ancient dragon are heavy and durable, it is necessary to use retention magic so that it does not completely go underground. Axel assumed that the entire floor of this establishment was one big magic circle. Miriam replied that in the end, no one could remove it from here, and hiring a magician capable of destroying the shard would be too expensive. There was a sign behind the participant saying that the fee for one attempt was 500 gordo. If the participant broke the weapon, he would pay a fine of 500 gordo, and anyone who could harm the obelisk would be paid 1,000 gordo. Axel noticed that such entertainment appeared as a measure to combat this scale. The young man said that it was quite interesting and said that he should try it too. Miriam asked Axel uncertainly. Axel headed towards the obelisk. Miriam asked the young man if he had been a warrior before. Axel gave a positive response and added that he would try to apply his fighting skills. Miriam's eyes filled with admiration. She timidly wished for Axel. As a result, Miriam, Baselia, and Kohaku wished good luck to the young man. Kohaku timidly asked the guy to be careful. Axel landed on the first floor and told the host that he also wanted to participate. The owner of the bar clarified whether the young man is the flying porter. The presenter replied that he certainly didn't mind, but he didn't want to upset so many promising newcomers. Axel smiled and thanked her for her concern. He replied to the organizer that everything would be fine because he was ready for any result. The presenter hesitantly allowed the young man to participate. He presented Axel with a display case with weapons behind which hung a sign with prices and added that he could choose any weapon. Axel decided to choose a sword to participate in the competition. The host attracted the attention of the people present in the restaurant and announced the next candidate. He introduced Axel as a dark horse and clarified his nickname, the Flying Porter. The people in the audience started to be surprised by the guy's presence in this competition. They cheered him on. At this time, Axel was calmly examining the sword. Axel touched the bag. All he had to do was imagine the image of the skill he was using. To begin with, he decided to try something simple. Axel rushed forward and used the Dragon Knight style. He used the Dragon God's claw and struck the obelisk with incredible force. The impact caused dust to rise around the crystal, and the young man's sword curled. The impact marks were imprinted on the obelisk, and now the dragon scales bore 3 deep cuts. The result of the young man's performance shocked Miriam, Kohaku, the restaurant owner, and the rest of those present in the establishment. Baselia was happily looking at her husband. The sword that Axel chose for this test cracked. The people in the restaurant were very surprised by the young man's performance. Axel's sword shattered and fell into small pieces. The young man stood in front of the obelisk, on which deep marks from the blow were visible. Dust flew around the hero, which blew the fragments of the sword away. Axel said that if this sword had been of better quality, maybe something would have happened. He only had the hilt in his hands. Axel looked at the remains of the sword and said that he certainly could not break the obelisk, but at least he could scratch it. The restaurant's customers were greatly surprised by his words. After the dust from the impact settled, even more people were able to see Axel's strength, and the crowd behind him was surprised by the sight. People did not believe that Axel could damage the obelisk, on which hundreds of people could not leave a scratch. The young man stood quietly, listening to the cheers of the crowd. The organizer of the tournament approached Axel. He was trembling all over from what he saw. He turned to the young man and shouted with admiration that it was incredible. His eyes lit up from what he saw. Axel calmly remarked that he still couldn't break it. Later, the young man noticed that even so, there was still a reward of 1,000 gordos. However, the hero's weapon broke down, as a result of which Axel assumed that he simply went to zero. The owner of the restaurant refuted his guesses and noticed that there were 3 cuts on the obelisk. The short owner of the establishment turned to the crowd and said with admiration that Axel was able to surprise everyone present in the tavern. The little man patted the young man on the shoulder and ordered him to bring 2,000 proudly to the winner of the competition. Axel calmly replied that he would be happy to receive such an award. Axel thanked the owner of the restaurant and asked him if everything had been done according to the rules. The short organizer of the contest waved his hands and happily replied that everything was fine because this was only a plus for his institution. Now he knows for sure that the crystal can be broken. Fierce admiration could be seen on the face of the owner of this restaurant. He ordered Axel to receive his reward as soon as possible. Axel goes up the stairs. Baselia's scream attracts his attention. The girl screams to her betrothed that she has not seen his abilities in action for a long time. She added that Axel looks a little tired. Kohaku and Miriam were standing behind her. Miriam was smiling tenderly, and Kohaku was in great disbelief because of what the young man had done. She couldn't even imagine that anyone would be able to do it. Baselia hugged the young man tightly. Axel replied to the girls that he was a little offended because he could only leave a couple of scratches. Axel noticed that at least he understood exactly how the transfer of the past works. Baselia completely hung on to the constricted one. Axel added that he was even able to apply the transferred skill. His words surprised Miriam greatly. She was stunned by the fact that Axel was able to use only one skill. She shouted at the young man what kind of skill it was, since he couldn't leave 3 such deep cuts on the crystal. She added that she had never seen such a thing before. The young man replied that he had used the dragon God Claw skill, which strikes 3 times at once, but that was all he could do. He tried to remember and use 4 skills, but they didn't work, otherwise the damage would have been 4 times more. Axel thought about the fact that his broken weapon was not a hindrance to this, because if you activate the Dragon Knight skill, even a straw will be enough to cut the scales of a dragon. Miriam said she found it strange that Axel only got one ability, because his bag has a huge capacity, but more than that, she really couldn't believe that a skill could have such amazing power. She has no words. The young man coquettishly agreed with this. By this point, Basel had already stopped sticking to the young man. Axel understood that even though the skill's power had dropped noticeably, but it would be enough for now, he decided that everything would be as before. Miriam timidly began to speak. The young man's mentor smiled and said that he was turning all the standards of the porter profession upside down, and she was very happy about it. She also added that she would really like to get Axel's past profession. Axel assumed that this was impossible. His words intrigued Miriam, and she smiled again and decided to change the subject. Miriam and Kohaku were happy about this evening. They noticed that they weren't bored at all today. They agreed that the evening had been well spent. They were also glad that they could see something unusual today. Miriam raised her glass and said it sounded like a toast. Axel remembered Miriam's words and told her that earlier she would find it strange that Axel could only use one skill from the past, given the capacity of his bag. He asked Miriam if anything would change if he took all the things out of the bag. The girl confirmed his words with a smile on her face. She added that the more space in the bag, the more space in the bag, the more skills you can recreate. She also asked a counter question and asked if the young man wanted to bring back any more skills from the past. Axel confirmed her suspicions and said that in any case, tomorrow he would experiment with the transfer of the past. Axel added that the ability he used on the crystal had exhausted him a lot because he hadn't used it for a long time, so he decided to leave talking about it and enjoy the meal. Baselina smiled and agreed with her betrothed's words. The whole group clinked glasses merrily. They decided to drink another boost in Axel's level. After a while, it was already dark outside. Miriam coquettishly invited Kohak to congratulate Axel more privately. Her words greatly embarrassed her friend. After all the restaurant's patrons had left, its owner began to clean up his establishment. After such a hard and eventful day, this ruin was especially difficult for him. The owner of the restaurant understood that he had not started this whole event in vain, because today the first fruits of his labors appeared. Exhaling and finishing with the cleaning, the restaurant owner decided that it was time to close the restaurant for today. He headed for the exit with a broom in his hands. Arriving on the first floor, the owner noticed that the crystal in the center of his establishment was broken more than before. This greatly surprised the short entrepreneur. He didn't understand what was going on. The man looked at the crystal in surprise. It turned out that the crystal was completely broken, a fact that greatly surprised the owner of the restaurant. Looking at the remains of the obelisk, the man did not even understand what had just happened. Looking into the depths of the crystal, the owner was even more surprised. He will assume that the blow of that porter was able to reach the depths of the crystal and shatter the scales. Looking at the broken obelisk, the owner was very happy. He thanked the porter and decided that next time he would have to thank him. Looking at the fragments of scales, the owner wondered who the flying porter really was. In the afternoon, in the same city, Axel was holding his transport bag and a cup of coffee in his hands. Looking at the bag, he says that he can use 2 skills of the past at a time. Each of them takes up exactly half the bag. Baselina sits in front of her betrothed and eats a loaf of bread. She tells the young man that maybe in the future it will become bigger, which means that the number of skills can increase. Axel notices that we still have to live to see this, although it would be nice. A couple of lovers were sitting opposite each other at the dining table, and an unknown man was standing to one side of them, who decided to call out to Axel during their meal. It was Dorth. Axel turned in his direction and greeted his friend. He asked what Dort was doing in this place at such a time. Dort laughed and informed the young man that he was the owner of this establishment. Dort told the guys that he had heard rumors that Axel had managed to damage the landmark of Mahedia. He added that, according to rumors, Axel was able to destroy the crystal created by the scales of an ancient dragon, thereby greatly pleasing the owner of that institution. The owner of that restaurant was very happy with this outcome of events and was ready to provide the guys with a bunch of free coupons for food. Axel, sipping a drink, calmly said that he was pleased with the fact that he was able to help them get rid of this problem. His words unnerved Dort, and he noticed that Axel was treating the destruction of the ancient dragon's scales as an ordinary nuisance. He also added that the young man surprises him more and more every time. Dort corrected himself by saying that it was getting easier for him to get information about the two of them every time. Dort also informed the guys that the rumors about them are not limited to one city. They have already become a sign among the porters of other regions. His words surprised Axel a little, and he clarified whether this was true. Dort gave a positive response and added that many people consider them geniuses. Immediately after these words, Dort invited the guys to take an elite place in his guild. Axel politely replied without hesitation that he would probably refuse his offer. The young man's answer disappointed the gentleman a little. The old man added that if they changed their minds, he would always be able to help them. He also recalled that Axel is his granddaughter's savior and the porter the whole city is proud of. After these words, Dort added that the guys can eat as much as they want and they should not worry about paying for dinner. Axel politely thanked Dort. They decided to take on a difficult assignment. The young man was holding a leaflet in his hand that talked about the risk of being attacked by demons. The recommended level for the task was 10 or higher. Axel paid attention to the part about demons. Axel, Baselia, and Minora stood in front of the guild employee. The young man clarified whether the risk at the task was increasing as the difficulty increased. Minora confirmed his words. Minora added that the location of the city is primarily affected. If you leave the protected urban area, the probability of encountering demons will greatly increase. Axel remembered that the City of Stars was located on the border with the primeval forest in an undeveloped territory. Minora confirmed his words and added that there are also enough tasks in the city, but working outside the city walls is a little different. She also said that it was especially noticeable at the difficulty level. She pointed to the notice on the board and decided to give the young man a good example. As an example, the girl gave 2 tasks, near the primeval forest, where you can meet crowds of demons, or a task in a dungeon created by unknown people, the depth of which is more than 100 meters. After these words, Baselia said that even in such requests, there is nothing wrong. Minora smiled and confirmed her words, and also added that thanks to this, they have plenty of resources. She added to her speech by saying that as long as the money is spinning, the city will develop, and it is not dangerous to live in it. The girl smiled happily and said that it was a good city. Axel agreed with her, and Baselia noticed that the food here is very tasty. Miriam told the guys that the heart of the demon beast is a magic stone that stores magical energy. If a demon is killed and a similar stone is left on the ground, it will spread its energy for a long time. For this reason, there are fertile lands in the vicinity of the city, which lies not far from the overgrown forest. Miriam leaned against Axel's shoulder and continued her speech. She added that this job is very difficult, so this time she will personally accompany them. Her words greatly surprised Axel and pleased Baselia. Miriam looked into the young man's eyes and said that even if he was a warrior in the past, he definitely had no experience in cargo delivery battles. The girl looked at the hero with a slight blush on her face. Axel hesitantly confirmed the girl's words. He noticed that since he became a porter, he had never had to fight with anyone during the delivery. Miriam looked at the young man cheerfully and repeated that that was why she decided to go with them. Axel asked the girl if she really wanted it that way because she probably had a lot to do. Miriam answered positively, without a drop of doubt, and added that she is a high-class porter for a reason. Miriam told the guys that the destination is not that far away, but the back is difficult. Axel didn't mind her company. The girls ducked and got ready and decided to show the guys some kind of trick. She informed her friends that she needed to show her skills to newbies, and immediately after that, she disappeared. Her disappearance greatly surprised the guys. Baselia turned her head in search of her friend, and suddenly Marian's hands appeared behind her. Marian suddenly grabbed the girl's chest, which greatly embarrassed her. Baselia turned towards Axel in embarrassment, but he replied that he had not done anything. Baselia began to spin around in search of Marian even more actively. Suddenly, Baselia felt something was amiss again. This time, Marion's hands tried to pull off the girl's underwear. Such an unexpected move embarrassed Baselia very much. Minora read out her companion's pelvis, and Axel watched the whole process with mild interest. The young man assumed that it was a skill about invisibility. Immediately after the hero's words, Minora appeared behind him. Minora informed the guys that this skill was called unstoppability, and after Axel turned his head, Minora's trail was already gone. While this skill is active, no one is able to detect the user. This way, you can run through a crowd of monsters without straining and even move things. Telling all this, the girl remembered how she ran through the crowd of minotaurs unnoticed. This whole story happened some time ago, when Marion had a lot of free time and therefore she often visited dangerous places. At that time, she usually delivered parcels to the nearest dungeon. Kohaku often helped her with her assignments. In the past, they even received a mission to rescue adventurers from trouble. After delivering the weapons and provisions, Marion received a lot of thanks. Listening to Marion's speech, Baselia is surprised at how good this skill is. The girl turns towards her husband and asks him if he would like to get the same skill. Axel replied to his betrothed that it would be nice to have such a skill. After his words, Baselia gave an example of the actions that a young man could perform with this skill. For example, peeping at her in the bathroom and sneaking into her room and doing whatever you want. She said all this in a rather vulgar context, to which the young man gave a negative answer. Axel turned towards Marion and told her that she was working very hard. Besides, she was tinkering with a newcomer like him. He added that his colleague is a wonderful girl. Marion, with a slight blush on her face, replied that it didn't cost her anything. She also told the young man that her opinion about him was the same. She noticed that Axel had just joined them, but was already going on such a difficult mission. In addition, she mentioned his betrothed, saying that she always helps him. Marion hugged Axel's other shoulder and was pleased to say that as a senior in the transportation industry, he really wanted to take more care of the young man. Baselia shared her words with trepidation. Baselia coquettishly said that now Axel no longer needed to take care of her because her level was much higher, and now she wanted to support him and help him in everything. Axel exhaled and informed the girls that they had become just like sisters and even thought exactly the same way. Marion smiled and asked the young man if he had decided on what task they would go on. Axel unfolded the task scroll and notified the girls that he had chosen it. In it, you just need to deliver the package to the laboratory and still very close to the city. According to the task, they needed to deliver special equipment to the Monster Research Laboratory. The difficulty of this task was 12. Axel noticed that such a task is great for a beginner like him. Marion noticed that this task didn't sound difficult. But his level is 12, which means it definitely won't be an easy ride for them. The group went towards the exit. In front of him, Marion said that she would always help Axel and invited them all to give their best. Baselia agreed with her friend's words. After a while, the boys had already left the city and were walking along a path through fertile fields. Baselia turned to her husband and told him that unlike the road to the City of Wind, she could already smell the demons here. Marion replied that they were not far from the city, and besides, these fields were being cultivated, so there were practically no demons here. Marion drew the children's attention to a white building in the distance. She informed them that this was the laboratory for the study of demonic beasts. Axel assumed that the laboratory would be surrounded by them. Marion replied that most likely the young man's fears were true. In addition, she noticed that the laboratory area was infested with gray demonic dogs, who are proficient in very powerful ice magic. This makes them one of the most dangerous animals in the primeval forest. Axel asked Marion if the lab had any problems with them. The girl replied uncertainly that she did not know. She added that if they had gathered so many demons in one place, then they should have contacted them earlier. At that time, the guys were already in the forest. On the way to the lab, Marion froze in place. Axel turned in her direction and asked if she was okay. Marion was looking out the lab window. She questioned how she could do her job dealing with such monsters. At this time, the guild director was fearfully watching the pack of monsters outside the walls of the building. The laboratory staff were shaking in fear as they watched the wolves outside. They understood that it was only a matter of time before the demonic dogs broke through. One of the employees informed the others that she had urgently called for help this morning. The guild director saw the hero's company through the window. The director was very happy to see them. Axel confidently stood in front of the army of wolves, holding his transport bag with one hand. The guild staff were surprised by how quickly the adventurers came to their aid. The young man and the company calmly watched the monsters. The young man noticed something amiss while looking at one of the wolves. One of the monsters used the ice magic spell, Ice Spear. Looking at the monster using magic, Marion noticed that each such spear could pierce through a person. The monster's spell was directed towards the guys. A huge number of spears quickly flew towards the guys. The guild staff watched in fear. This turn of events did not leave Marion aside. She fearfully rushed to the young man's aid. Marion wanted to push the hero away from the mines, but Axel blocked the girl's path with his hand and asked her not to worry. He was holding his transport bag in his hand. The hero's determination greatly surprised Marion. As soon as the icicles approached the guys, Axel used some kind of skill of his own. Immediately after that, all the icicles disappeared, which greatly surprised the wolves. Axel himself was very happy that his plan had succeeded. The young man grinned and released a spell towards the wolves, saying that now it was his turn. Powerful magic headed towards the monsters, which terrified the latter. The gray demonic wolves were amazed by their own ice mine magic. Marion watched in fascination as she lay on the ground. The wolves that were previously standing in front of them were pierced by icicles, and magic crystals fell out of them. The monsters, which were not hit by the young man's attack, rushed away from the battlefield in fear. Seeing the fleeing wolves, the hero finished off the remaining monsters with the same spell. A giant ice block formed in front of the laboratory. Axel looked at his companion lying on the ground and invited her to get back to work. Minora began to slowly get up from the ground. She was still in shock from what was happening. She asked Axel why he was acting as if nothing had happened. Axel watched the girl with a slight smile on his face. The young man began to help the girl get up. She very emphatically noticed that ordinary porters were not even able to keep track of these spears. She also tried to go into hiding. Marion asked the young man in surprise how he did it. Getting up from the ground with the help of Axel, the girl said that she had never seen such attacks with the help of a transport bag in her life. She asked admiringly how he managed to deflect the spear with his bag. Her words put the young man in a stupor. He clarified with the girl that this was the easiest and safest option. Marion shyly clung to Axel's chest. She noticed that the hero didn't even have to use weapons or waste mana. The girl added in embarrassment that an ordinary porter would not have been able to guess such a thing. Marion and Axel looked at the block of ice, and the girl noticed that the young man had repelled the attack for such a long distance. She still did not let the young man out of her arms. After that, she snuggled up to the young man again and said with relief that he had coped in this battle. The young man smiled and replied that actually, he just has a few throwing skills. He asked Marion not to make him blush. Baselia stood to the side. He was embarrassed and slightly offended by what her colleagues were doing. The hero's betrothed also clung to Axel. They, together with Marion, hugged the young man tightly. With a tired expression on his face, Axel asked the girls not to hug him so tightly. Baselia held the young man's hand in embarrassment. Axel repeated that he had previously had experience throwing weapons and everything like that. He also added that the girls shouldn't have worried. The companions released the young man and looked at the block of ice again. Marion noticed that it was the first time he had seen Axel in battle. The girl added that now she understands why Kaufman is interested in him. Marion smiled sweetly and said that it happens every time. She also added that the young man never ceases to amaze her. Axel listened to his girlfriend's words with a smile. He realized that it was repeated every time. The hero remembered a confused unknown girl and the fact that he had often heard such words before. Axel came to his senses and looked at Marion. He told the girls that it was time for them to move on because the meeting with the dogs had delayed their company. He turned his gaze to the bag and suggested that Marion finish quickly. After a while, the hero and the company were standing near the tree. Axel added that those monsters might come back, so they should hurry up. Marion hesitantly agreed with his words and suggested that they go on. The girl smiled and noticed that despite the high level of difficulty of the task and the fact that he had to face such a difficulty as a pack of demonic beasts, he coped without relying on her at all. Marion was once again convinced that the young man was simply incredible. The guys were standing in front of the laboratory. Before entering the building, Marion addressed the young man. Marion said that she would temporarily leave the young man and look around the area just in case. Baselia added that she would go with Marion. Axel smiled and wished the girls good luck. After the girls left the young man, he knocked on the door. The gates of the laboratory opened and someone's footsteps could be heard from the entrance hall. One of the employees was rushing to meet Axel. Along the way, she thanked the young man for saving them from the demons. When the director of the laboratory came running to Axel, she bent over and exhaled from fatigue. The young man replied that she shouldn't worry about anything because it was part of his job. He leaned closer to the girl and asked amiably if she worked here. When she came to her senses, the girl smiled and picked up her badge. She remembered that she had not yet had time to introduce herself. The girl's name was Noir. She was an employee of the laboratory for the study of demons. Axel replied amiably that he was very pleased to meet the girl, but she promptly replied that it was an honor for the team of their laboratory because he was able to save them. Remembering the young man's last fight, she notifies the hero that the entire laboratory staff watched how he was able to reflect the magic of the demonic dog. At the moment of the battle, the entire character was mesmerized by the sight of Axel in battle. The young man asked Noir where these animals came from, but she replied, confused, that they were still investigating the details of the incident. The girl assumed that someone or something had forced them to leave the primeval forest as soon as possible and come here. Recalling the past situation, the girl says that she and her colleagues had to urgently hide in the building from the angry wolves. After closing the doors against the monsters, the girl notices that for the first time there were so many of them that they could safely break inside. She also says that if the young man had not come, none of them would have survived, because even in the era of the Demon Lord, nothing like this happened. But she decided to return to the present time and added that, as for their version, something terrible happened in the primeval forest, where these monsters live. Noir and Axel looked towards the forest where the wolves had come from. After hearing the girl's story, the young man thought about it. His thoughts were interrupted by Noir's speech. The girl assumed that it was very dangerous in this forest right now. She looked at Axel and asked him to be careful when he went to look for the reason in the forest. Her words stunned the young man. Axel sat down and calmly informed Noir that she had made a mistake because the task with the forest was not in his specialty, but she enthusiastically noticed that the young man was very strong. After that, she asked even more enthusiastically if anyone else would join the task. Noir also clarified that the young man arrived at the scene very quickly. Axel, with a puzzled face, decided to laugh it off and asked the girl if the search tasks were delicious. After that, the young man reached into his transport bag. He told Noir that he did not recall anything like this in the conditions of the assignment. But I was surprised by Axel's response. She found it strange, because the request should have an emergency status. The guy took out a flyer with a task from his bag. After the girl's words, Noir and Axel looked at each other in disbelief. But I awkwardly asked Axel if he was one of those special fighters who work with extremely difficult tasks. Axel calmly replied that it was a stupid guess, because he is an ordinary porter. His words were able to surprise the girl very much, but she pulled away and said that it just couldn't be, and timidly asked Axel if he was joking now. Axel continued rummaging through his transport bag. He gave the girl a negative answer and repeated that he was simply instructed to deliver the package to this laboratory. After these words, Axel took out a large number of boxes for the laboratory from his bag. The young man presented the delivered parcel to the employee and asked her to sign the receipt document. The sight of the boxes and crate lying in front of Noor shocked the girl. Axel asked her to sign the delivery box, but the laboratory employee was completely perplexed. Not a drop of life could be seen in her eyes. At first, Noir thought about it, then realized the whole situation, and then reacted with great surprise and admiration to the package. The girl asked to go back, away from the young man. Noir asked Axel if he was a porter from the Sagittarius Guild. The young man raised his transport bag higher and pointed at it with his finger. A slight bewilderment could be seen on his face. He repeated to Noor once again that he was just an ordinary porter. His words shocked the guild employee. She didn't understand how a simple porter could handle a horde of demonic beasts. Minora confirmed her words. Axel asked the companions if everything was all right with the surroundings of the laboratory. All this time, Noir was in a state of perplexity. Baselia turned towards the distant employee and told Axel that she had heard someone screaming. The lab worker's robe began to slowly slide down. Baselia adjusted Noir's uniform and reported that they were curious about what had happened, and therefore they came running. Immediately after these words, Baselia asked, confused, what was going on here at all. Axel replied that they were mistaken for a rescue squad. Minora went up to Nora and told her that they were in a bit of a hurry, so she better get over it quickly. The confused guild employee replied that everything was fine now. Noor stole behind Minora's back and added that even if Marion was here, then Axel really was the carrier of the Sagittarius. Minora looked at the embarrassed employee with a smile. But she added that it's very hard to believe if you remember the footage of that battle. Axel smiled and calmly replied that it was possible. Immediately after that, he asked the laboratory employee if everything was in order with their packages. She quickly examined the delivered cargo and replied confusedly that everything was fine with them because nothing was damaged or lost. But she was holding a delivery contract and a pen in order to sign it. She happily thanked the guys for their help. An employee of the laboratory awkwardly approached Marion and shyly asked her friend if Axel was a new member of her guild. Marion cheerfully replied that Noir's guesses were correct. After that, she added that the young man had joined the guild not so long ago, but was already its irreplaceable employee. While saying these words, Marion looked at the young man. A smile and a blush could be seen on her face. But she smiled with the same slight blush on her face, realizing her precious friend's words. After that, something dawned on the girl. She remembered the moment of Axel's battle, where he returned the enemy spell to the enemies. The laboratory employee realized that the young man is not only a porter, but also an excellent fighter. Her eyes shone with admiration. Axel amicably confirmed that he is a new member of the Marion Guild and thanked Noir for their cooperation. Next to the young man was Baselia, who smiled tenderly at the employee. After his words, Axel decided to immediately notice that, in his case, even if he was capable of fighting, it was just his secondary skill. The guys all started walking together in the same direction. Axel understood that he was now a porter and therefore had to fulfill his new duties. In the process of moving to a new place, Minora suddenly remembers something. She points her hand in Axel's direction and informs Noir that Axel is not an ordinary porter. Minora quickly closes the distance with the lab employee and asks her never to force other porters to do something like that, but she timidly replied that she would not do it. After a while, the guys came to the main hall, where the rest of the laboratory staff were. Noir stood at the head of the scientists and turned to Axel. She happily thanked the youth for driving away all the demonic beasts. She smiled and looked at the hero affectionately, but also added that she would be glad to work with Axel again, because the young man helped them a lot. Axel and Baselia smiled and replied that they would also be happy to work with Noir again. The action takes place in Mekatea. There is a table in the large, luxurious hall, headed by Dort Kaufman. Dort solemnly announces that the 107th meeting of S-rank guild members is being held today. The old man's face was serious. Dort introduced himself and began his grandiose speech. Minora interrupted the organizer of this event. She smiled and offered to talk less formally because she was the only one who came to the meeting. Dort exhaled and sat down at the table. He agreed with Minora's words and thanked her for coming to the meeting. Kaufman noticed with displeasure that the rest of the guild members had missed the meeting. His words surprised Minoru a little. The girl said that due to the approach of the Holy Exchange, everyone went to the capital. She recalled that the issue of adjusting the pricing policy for merchants was on the agenda. Minora was holding a document for the delivery of magic stones and supplies from the merchant guilds. Minora wasn't going anywhere, so she stayed at the guild. Kaufman informed the girl that he wanted to talk to her alone anyway. His words surprised Minora a little, and she questioned Kaufman's intentions. Dort told Minora that Axel, while completing the task of delivering a package to the laboratory for the study of demonic beasts, also fulfilled the request for protection from these very beasts, which his people accepted. After Kaufman told Minora about his thoughts, he asked the girl how he managed it in the first place. Minora was confused and replied that she couldn't put into words all the nuances of that battle. She also reported that during the battle, she had a feeling that it was better not to interfere. After her words, Minora paused for a moment and turned to Kaufman. She suggested that Axel might be the faceless dragon knight. Dort replied to the girl that he had also had the same thought. The head of the guild noticed that due to the passive skill of the Dragon Knight disinformation, which can distort any data, his identity remains a mystery. Kaufman concluded that he and Minora would never be able to find out for sure. Minora thought about it. The girl decided to assume that they were right, and Axel was really a Dragon Knight. After that, she wondered why the Dragon Knight suddenly became a novice and received the profession of a porter. Kaufman agreed that the Dragon Knight really didn't need to become a porter. Kaufman wondered where Axel's combat abilities could come from. Minora smiled contentedly and told Dort that the couple would answer if they were asked directly. Kaufman panicked and said that he didn't really want to touch the sleeping dragon by the tail. His answer made Minora laugh, and she told Dort that she would contact him if she received any information. After that, there was a knock on the door of the hall. The doors to the room were opened by a messenger who reported an urgent report from the research laboratory for the study of demonic beasts. The messenger told the audience that many huge pits had been discovered in the primeval forest. He assumed they were footprints. The messenger also told Dort and Minora that they had interviewed eyewitnesses who confirmed the presence of an unknown giant monster in the area. His words made Minoru think. She realized that this had already happened when the demon lord appeared. Dort exhaled and said that they needed to inform the head of the City of Stars about this, so that they could prepare in case he attacked. After a while, Dort and Minora left the guild. It was already late at night outside. Dort told the girl that he had a strange feeling about Axel and all these events. Dort hoped that no serious problems would arise on this basis. Minora replied that there was nothing to be done about it and noticed that something strange was always happening in this city. Minora and Dort went for a walk around the city at night. Kaufman asked Minora if they should have informed other guilds about this. Minora questioned this decision and added that in any case, the responsibility for it would fall on their shoulders. Axel gave a positive response and said that he is still experimenting with the skill of transferring the past. Holding the transport bag in his hands, Axel got ready for something. After a short preparation, he used the vision enhancement skill. After using the skill, Axel noticed how clean his house was. After what he saw, the young man immediately informed Baselia about the cleanliness of the house. The girl laughed happily and said that it was all because she had cleaned the house. Baselia smiled contentedly and informed Axel that she allowed him to praise her a lot and a lot. Axel smiled and praised the girl for the job she had done. He was still holding his transport bag in his hands. The young man noticed the inscription, "I love my hubby," on the floor. The young man informed Baselia about this, which greatly surprised the latter. The girl was embarrassed and covered her face with her hands. She told her betrothed that she had wiped everything and wiped it dry. Embarrassed, Baselia put her hands away from her face and asked Axel if he had seen the inscription because of his enhanced vision. The young man assumed that her guesses were correct. Axel also noted that this was the first time he had used this skill without a helmet and suggested that this made the effect even more noticeable. Axel suggested to Baselia to check something else. Baselia happily jumped up from the sofa and gave her consent. The couple went outside, a joyful Baselia walking in front, saying that it was just like the good old days. The girl turned into a huge dragon and asked if Axel Nav would be able to ride her. Baselia soared high into the air in the form of a dragon. Being high in the sky, she watched Axel's actions. The young man decided to use the skill Jump Boost. After using the skill, the guy jumped high into the sky, which greatly surprised the dragon. Axel jumped on Baselia's back and said that he could still keep up with her. The dragon rubbed its muzzle against Axel's face and was surprised to notice that Axel was able to jump so high the first time. After these words, Baselia resumed her human form and hugged the young man joyfully. Being completely naked, the girl cheerfully assumed that her betrothed had jumped even higher than before. Axel agreed with her suggestion. Axel smiled cheerfully and said that it had been a long time since then, and he didn't even remember what it was like before. Baselia looked at the young man lovingly. Axel landed with a happy girl in his arms, which raised a lot of dust around him. He assumed that the helmet and armor were too heavy. Baselia hugged Axel tightly. The young man realized that they would not be able to stop there and suggested that the girls continue their experiments. The couple returned to their possessions. This time, Axel used the hearing enhancement skill. At that time, his girlfriend was rapidly running away somewhere. Baselia hid behind the wall and stealthily looked at the young man. The girl said very quietly that she loved her husband. After that, she came around the corner and asked if the young man had heard anything. Axel smiled and replied to the girl that she said the same thing that was written on the floor. His words confused the girl a lot. After applying the ability, Axel noticed that his hearing had increased, but his eyesight had weakened. The young man realized that he could no longer see the traces of that inscription on the floor. Axel picked up his transport bag again and assumed that his enhanced eyesight had disappeared when he used the hearing enhancement skill. In the end, the young man agreed that these were just experiments. Axel looked at Baselia and told her that he could use a maximum of 2 skills from the past at a time, but the effect of the old skill was cancelled. The guy began to inspect his transport bag. By this time, Baselia had already managed to close the distance between them. Axel looked in her direction and told her that now he needed to integrate the skills in a convenient order and think about how and when to switch between them. The girl listened to his words with satisfaction. Baselia hugged the young man tightly and told him contentedly that her hubby's skills were only getting better. Axel smiled and replied that she was still stronger than him. The young man hugged the girl with one hand and held his transport bag with the other. He noticed that he did not notice any enhancement of his skills. He found this feature interesting. After his remarks, Axel told Baselia that the eternal passive skill from the Dragon Helmet Master's helmet permanently reduces the effectiveness of all his skills. The young man put his head on the top of his betrothed's head and said that it would be better if he didn't think about it at all. His words surprised and upset the girl a little. Axel and Baselia left the building. On the entrance staircase, something caught the young man's attention. He turned his head to the side and asked his companion if she had heard anything. Baselia gave a negative answer. Axel assumed that it was because of his hearing enhancement skill. The guy and the girl decided to temporarily stop on the stairs. Standing on it in the middle of the night, Axel remembered that some demonic beasts make sounds that ordinary people cannot hear. Baselia noticed that the same thing happens with dragons. She added that the frequency of the sounds they make is higher than what ordinary people can hear. The young man confirmed her words. Axel also recalled that he had never heard such sounds when he was wearing his knight's helmet. Baselia joked dejectedly, asking if that helmet had cursed her husband. After her joke, she immediately snuggled up to Axel and reminded him that it was only thanks to this helmet that she met her husband. The girl cheerfully added that because of this, she doesn't want to talk badly about this helmet. Axel warily replied that he would not reject this theory because it could give him a very valuable experience. After these words, the guy turned towards Baselia, who was holding his transport bag. He suggested that the girl experiment a little more and go to bed. Baselia happily agreed to his suggestion. The girl happily declared that she would be with the young man until her very last breath. They continued to walk around the city at night. It's morning in the city. Axel looked out the window, half asleep. He was awakened by something strange happening in the city, and Baselia continued to sleep soundly on the bed. It all started as soon as Axel woke up. While walking around the city, the young man asked his companion if she thought it was too noisy in the city today. The girl hesitantly confirmed his words and added that it was a little annoying for her. A couple came to the guild. Once inside, Axel noticed Kaufman and greeted the old man amiably. Dort wished the young man good morning and said that he had arrived just in time. Minora looked at Axel and added that she had just received a request from Mr. Kaufman. Baselia and Axel moved on to the table where Dort and Minora were sitting. The girl informed him that it was the right time for his last test. Minora was holding a book in her hands in which the task condition was written. The condition stated that the employee needed to accompany an elite squad as support fighters to clear the primeval forest of giant demons. Minora added that this task has the highest level of difficulty currently available to Axel. The young man picked up a flyer with a task and asked the girl if he would become a full-fledged porter if he fulfilled this request. His companion was cheerfully looking at the assignment sheet. Axel hesitated and asked if it was too early for him to take on high-difficulty assignments. Minora smiled gently and assured the guy that everything would be fine. In fact, the complexity of the delivery task depends on the danger of the destination. In other words, it increases depending on the required degree of combat training. Given Axel's abilities, there shouldn't be any problems, even though this is a primeval forest, which causes very high risks. Minora reassured the young man by informing the latter that Mr. Kaufman had thought of everything, so it would not be difficult to complete this task. Axel was holding a task sheet in his hands. He noticed the item about giant demons and suggested that this was why the city was so noisy. Kaufman looked at the young man and said that he would be fine. Kohaku was also in this room. She looked out the window and added that the City of Stars had already faced similar difficulties many times. She said that's the reason they have an elite squad to fight the demons. The girl added that it did not seem superfluous to provide them with support just in case. That's why Kaufman gave him this assignment. Axel noticed that all the members of this demonic beast hunting squad are high-level fighters. He was holding additional information about the assignment in his hands. It outlined the squad's composition: Paladin, Master Witch, Master Thief, Senior Monk, and Master Swordsman. Dort confirmed his words. The guild leader added that this squad has been constantly on the battlefield since the war with the Demon King. This squad is their elite. Minora added that the difficulty level of the task is very high because the primeval forest was chosen as the destination. In fact, they received a difficult task that is quite easy to complete. After all the explanations, Minoru smiled and asked the young man, "Is he willing to take on this assignment?" Axel continued to study the information given to him on paper. He agreed to the assignment and asked for permission to begin it. After hearing the positive response, Kamen and Minoru were greatly encouraged. Dort got up from his chair and thanked Axel for giving his consent. Dort and Axel shook hands. Axel and Baselia started to leave the hall. Minoru watched the boys go. The girl clarified that this building can be regarded as an exam to determine whether it is ready to become a full-fledged porter, and wished them good luck. When Axel went outside, he noticed that he finally had the opportunity to become a real porter. Baselia and Axel said goodbye to Dort and Minoru, who saw them off. Axel and Baselia were walking through the city. On her way, the girl noticed someone and asked her husband if this was the elite squad. In front of them stood a tall man in armor with a cape. He asked Axel if he was the porter who would accompany them. The man in armor introduced himself as Sig, the leader of the Starlight Squad. Sig looked quite formidable. He had no hair on his head and wore 2 large scars on his face. His class was Paladin. Zig's bald head sparkled. The man joked that in the heat of battle they could navigate by his beautiful hairstyle. Sig also introduced his colleagues, a girl in a big black hat, a boy in a hood, and a man in a strange outfit. Axel smiled and told Sig that he was very pleased to meet them. The young man introduced his companion Baselia. The girl smiled and greeted the squad. Sig smiled broadly and informed the young man about what the head had said about them. He replied that he was also glad to meet Axel, the flying porter. Sig remembered that he had seen Axel on duty once before. Then, the appearance of the young man greatly surprised the paladin. Sig noted that, given his approach and the merits that the head of state spoke about, it's strange that Axel is still a beginner. He assumed that Axel was a master porter. Sig added that looking at his bag, it seems even more incredible. Axel picked up his duffel bag and asked Sig if he was worried that the newbie wouldn't be able to handle the job ahead. Sig gave a negative answer. Sig smiled broadly again and said that almost everyone who lives in this city knows about the two of them. A crowd of onlookers formed around the squad, staring at the heroes in fascination. Axel smiled and suggested that their reputation had long been ahead of them. The young man noticed that it would not hurt for them to receive such requests more often instead of training. Baselia smiled contentedly. Axel thanked Sig once again and said that he was looking forward to working with them. The girl in the hat asked the newcomers not to worry and assured them that they would definitely protect them. The guy in the hood waved at them and cheerfully asked the guys to feel safe, as if they were sailing on the Titanic. In response, Baselia waved to a friendly friend, and Axel smiled slightly and noticed that there was a very pleasant atmosphere in the group. The young man drew attention to the mountain of supplies and clarified with Sig that all they had to do was save supplies in case of need. They shook hands and set off. After leaving the city, the squad immediately ran into a crowd of goblins. Sig exhaled and said they'd have to work a little bit. Paladin rushed into battle and hit several goblins with one blow. He added that they would quickly deal with the monsters. Axel watched the actions of his colleagues. He started collecting monster magic stones, and in the process mentioned that he had heard from Old Man Dort that Strawlight had participated in the war with the Demon King. While putting the stones in a bag, he asked the guys if he had fought on the front line. The boy in the hood gave a negative answer while slashing goblins, and added that nevertheless they had seen many different monsters. The guy noticed that they also saw the same monster people who fought with them. His words were confirmed by Sig standing next to them. Sig supplemented the boy's story and said that the heroes on the battlefield were amazing. Each of them could single-handedly destroy crowds of opponents. Sig said that it still makes him shudder from these memories, especially remembering several members of these very heroes. They were monsters, killing monsters. The guy in the hood noticed that they were some kind of support group. Sig exhaled and said that he too would like to become a hero. After a while, walking through the forest, Zig said that he was very hungry because of the long journey. He asked Axel if he had anything to eat. The young man gave a positive answer. Axel started taking something out of his bag. He remembered that there were some light snacks in the supplies. Baselia was mesmerized, waiting for her betrothed to take out the supplies. He took out delicious sandwiches from Mexico City from his transport bag. The elite squad fairly crowded around the porter. Sieg thanked the young man and recalled what he had heard about some herbs that were added to their dishes in Mexico, which made them very useful. Sieg took out a leaflet and looked at it. The man recalled that he was one of those who investigated the reason why the scales of the ancient dragon flew away to Mexico. Axel was greatly surprised by his words. The young man clarified with Sieg that there really was such a study. Baselia was happily eating her sandwiches. Sieg confirmed his words and added that because they were weakly involved in the war with the Demon King, they didn't know much. The guy in the hood clarified that this dragon had never flown up to the Star City. His words were able to bring Sieg into a stupor. The man replied that they had only been told that he had flown wounded near the city and had shed his scales in a deplorable state. Axel listened attentively to Sieg. The young man noticed that this was done to lighten the body and reduce energy consumption. After that, he asked the squad if they had ever fought this dragon during the war with the Demon King. Hearing Axel's question, Sieg laughed and replied that they would not have had a chance against the ancient dragon. Sigi added that he had seen him on the battlefield once, and that he still needed to look for monsters stronger than him. After these words, the paladin fell silent. The lady in the hat asked Sig why he wasn't saying anything, and noticed that Sig was sweating so much from fear that his bald spot lit up. Zig replied confusedly that it was because the dragon was really scary. After all, a wounded dragon begins to absorb magical energy and recover, and from this their strength is not only restored, but also grows. He added that back then he had no choice but to run, but now he is strong enough to hurt him. Immediately after this conversation, the lady in the hat became alert and picked up her staff. She said it wasn't important and they should deal with it later because they had guests now. A group of demonic wolves appeared in front of the squad. Sieg said that it was very rare and drew attention to the crowd of demonic wolves directly ahead. Axel looked at the wolves and asked Sieg if these kids were that rare. Sieg replied that these creatures usually sit in the depths of the primeval forest, but it seems that stronger demons push them back to the city itself. Sig and the lady in the hat watched their opponents warily. Siege began to take out a long, thin-bladed sword from his belt. He added that they are looking for people to profit from something, but due to the fact that the city is too well protected, they have to wander in its vicinity. Nowadays, their main diet is the same adventurers as their squad. Sieg held out his sword in front of him and said that this was an easy enemy, but the guys should not relax. He was pretty serious. Taking a firmer grip on the sword, Sig asked Axel to cover him from behind. The bald paladin turned to his squad and rhetorically asked if he was ready to face the gray demonic wolves. Sigi and his squad prepared to rush into battle. With a smile on his face, Sigi ordered the squad to attack. The girl in the hat took the staff in both hands and held it horizontally in front of her, and the air began to rise around her. The woman carefully looked at the wolves, holding her staff tightly. She conjured a fireball in front of her and directed it towards the gray demonic wolves. The ball hit the pack. The damage from the spell had a strong effect on the ground near the squad's opponents. In the blink of an eye, immediately after the lady in the hat's spell, Zig closed the distance with the dogs and delivered a crushing horizontal blow to one of them. The teamwork of the squad was able to surprise Axel a little. Baselia noticed that their squad was quite strong. Axel agreed with his betrothed's statement and looked at the lady in the hat. The young man started rummaging in his transport bag, saying that it was even kind of boring. At this time, the ground beneath the gray demonic dogs finally cracked, which shocked the monsters. One of the beasts looked at the resulting wreckage after the magic of the girl in the hat. Immediately after that, the wolf shifted his gaze upward. Zig was already rushing at him from above, ready to strike at the monster. Axel attracted the attention of the witch girl and threw her a mana recovery potion. The girl carefully caught the potion and thanked the porter for his help. Axel watched Sig's actions. A man in armor was preparing to deliver a sweeping blow to the monsters. Axel took his two-handed sword in his hand and asked Sig to take this blade as an additional weapon. At this time, the laughing paladin struck at the wolves. The gray demonic dogs were unhappy with Sig's actions. Immediately after hitting the monsters, the paladin's sword shattered, which greatly surprised the man. The bald knight did not lose his head and struck the monsters a second blow with the sword he held in his other hand. Sig was upset by the sword's breakage. He wondered why this sword turned out to be so fragile. Axel replied that this sword was designed for stabbing. After his words, one of the squad members, a modest boy in a hoodie, asked the young man to cover him so that he could help Zig. Axel replied that he would follow the instructions of his colleague. The squad dealt with all the gray demonic dogs. Sieg happily announced that they had finished with the opponents, and now all they had to do was collect magic stones from the dead monsters and continue on their way. After these words, someone called out to Axel, in connection with which the young man turned in the direction of the shouter. Sieg awkwardly asked if this was exactly the first time they had performed such a task. Axel confirmed his words and asked Sieg if they had done their job well. Baselia and Axel were standing in front of the elite squad. Sieg gave the guys a positive response and happily added that they had done just fine. Sieg said admiringly that it was the best combat support their group had ever received. The girl in the hat noted admiringly that they always supported their actions in battle, coming to the rescue in time before they were completely exhausted. The guy in the hood added that they always provided them with new weapons on time and accurately. Sieg admiringly approached Axel and said that they seemed to be working with some kind of professionals. He asked the young man if it had anything to do with his previous job. Axel calmly replied that you could say that. The hero smiled and said that they had sometimes done such a job. The young man remembered the times when he needed to protect the brave heroes as a dragon knight. After that, he turned his gaze to a satisfied Baselia and remembered that she had a similar situation. The girl looked at the young man questioningly. Axel remembered how he had helped this cute dragon gain strength and experience for a while. Sieg said that he had no doubt that the head had made the right choice and ordered him to move on. The party went deeper into the forest, and on its way, Sieg noticed a severed tree. The squad leader approached the remains of the tree and informed the company that they had indeed been able to quickly find the demon by following these footprints, after which he drew the squad's attention to the indicated point. There was a giant monster in front of the guys. Axel asked Sieg if this individual was a giant troll. The bald paladin replied that they were usually twice as big. After hearing Sieg's reply, Axel continued to calmly observe the troll. The monster was carrying a piece of broken wood in his hand. Sieg added that trolls have very strong skin, and also drew the young man's attention to the fact that the monster's hands were stained with blood. Sieg was closely following the forest monster. He also added that according to the information in the request, he had already killed 3 squads. Axel turned his attention to the paladin. Sieg said that all they needed was the power to break through his tough skin. He added that the magic fist is capable of this. The troll viciously wandered through the forest without noticing the adventurers. Sieg noticed that even though his skin was very tough, it was weak against magical attacks. However, Sieg was not relaxed. His condition attracted the young man's attention. He added that all they needed here was one sudden blow. Sieg assumed that everything would end quickly if they attacked from ambush. After that, he added that if something went wrong, he would need the help of Axel and Baselia. Finally, Sieg told Axel that they should not get close to the troll, because he kills his victims with one blow, or at least they can drop all their belongings and escape. The men watched the troll's actions from the side. Sieg ordered the squad to aim straight at the chest, right at the heart. While they were attacking the forest monster from the front, he would bypass it from the rear and deal a fatal blow with magic. He also asked the guys to inspect the surroundings for reinforcements. Sieg grinned. He was determined to finish everything quickly. His team supported their commander. Sieg and the girl in the hat ran out from behind the troll. The troll quickly turned around and swung to strike at the guys. The paladin managed to block the troll's blow, and Sieg grinned and mockingly asked the monster if it had expected such a move. After the bald commander fended off the troll's blow, he commanded the girl in the hat to strike him with magic. The witch replied that she would carry out the commander's order, and, with a smile on her face, conjured an ice spear, a high-level ice magic. Sieg dodged a spell flying at the monster and looked at his combat friend. The squad leader was confident that such an attack would definitely be able to finish off the troll. The girl's magic slammed into some armor under the troll's cape. This outcome greatly surprised the adventurers. Sieg looked at the monster's chest in disbelief and wondered what he had managed to cover his chest with. There was a dragon scale under the troll's cape. The troll screamed and hit the guys. The monster's punch was aimed at the enchantress in the hat, which greatly surprised her. The troll's attack almost reached the magician and crashed into the ground. The woman in the hat was thrown by the shockwave into a nearby tree. After the lady hit the oak tree, she fell to the ground. After the paladin's girlfriend suffered damage from the troll's attack, the commander furiously rushed to meet the monster. He landed a powerful blow on the monster's knee, but his attack didn't do much damage. The troll clenched his fist with force and swung at Sieg. The course of the battle terrified the team members, and the hooded guy shouted at Sieg to be careful. At that moment, Sieg realized that he had made a mistake because he had been too hasty. At the same time, Axel took out his transport bag and started using some kind of skill. With his actions, he greatly surprised the members of this squad. Something from the troll's side rushed past Sig with unimaginable speed. This stunned the paladin, who was in the heat of battle. The unexpected actions of the porter stunned the lady in the hat and the hooded boy who was helping her up. Axel's projectile was flying straight towards the monster. As soon as he reached the target, he pierced through the dragon's scales. Sieg watched in amazement. Axel shouted to the squad leader that this was their chance to finish off the troll and ordered the paladin to strike. After the young man's shout, Sig came to his senses and quickly swung at the troll. Zig furiously inflicted a strong, sweeping cut on the monster. The monster screamed in pain and fell to the ground. Sig breathed a sigh of relief and asked what had just happened. He was standing right in front of the defeated troll. The paladin turned towards the young man, remembering the spear. He asked Axel if he had thrown it at the troll. The young man calmly confirmed his words, reminding the commander that he had asked to cover him from a distance. Axel started putting the spears back into the reporter's bag. During this, Axel asked the stunned adventurers if he had completed his task. The young man's companions uncertainly gave a positive answer. This answer pleased Axel. He was glad that he had not let them down in a difficult moment. Sig and the rest of the team stared at the young man in surprise. The squad leader clearly wanted to tell him something, but suddenly he changed his mind. Baselia snuggled up to her betrothed and said that that giant troll was very scary. Axel calmly noted that this squad was not as weak as they had thought. His words shocked the rest of the team. Axel and Sieg's conversation was interrupted by a guy in a hood. He turned to Sieg, saying that he definitely had to see it. Paladin asked the guy not to shout at the whole forest and reminded him that they had only 2 goals left. The hooded youth aggressively replied that it didn't matter and hurried the squad to look at something they had surrendered. Sig and his team saw a pool of blood. All the members of the Strawlight Squad were very surprised by what they saw. In front of them lay the remains of giant trolls. Their appearance startled the adventurers. A group of heroes approached several dead bodies of orcs in a clearing in the middle of the forest. The girl said that it seemed to be the remnants of their goals and wondered what had happened to them. Sieg replied that he didn't know and wondered what kind of magic was capable of cutting them up like that. He said that these giants were the thunderstorm of the primeval forest, and he had never heard of anyone capable of such a thing. After that, a crystal nearby caught his attention. Sieg thought that it looked like an ancient dragon had worked in this place, but he quickly dismissed this thought because he did not understand why he would appear in the primeval forest. But the scales scattered around suggest otherwise, so it's possible he's been hiding here ever since he shed his scales during the war. At that moment, Siege was called out, telling him to look at something incredible. People found the skin of an ancient dragon nearby. A group of heroes approached him. Axel said he dropped it while healing his wounds. Sig was surprised that the guy thought so too, and noticed that this skin would never rot and would lie in this place for many years. Axel also noticed that he had not fully recovered yet. Sig was again shocked that the guy was right, and added that otherwise only the skin would have remained after healing. The hero said that, however, he was still injured. It was clearly noticeable in the large pools of blood. The guy said that the traces of blood were still fresh, and Sig replied that he had most likely flown away. The young man agreed with his companion's words, but he thought about the fact that he had left without fully healing. The squad leader said that the dragon had absorbed enough magic stones, and then he wondered where he could go, because there is no better place to collect magical energy than the primeval forest. At that moment, the girl called out to the commander, and she shouted with a worried and shocked look that a message had just arrived from Kaufman, namely, the message that the City of Stars was attacked by a dragon. He was above a city whose protective walls were in the shape of a hexagonal star. The dragon began to approach the city, descending, and then stopped, crouching on the wall. People looked at him in surprise, scared and shocked, screaming as the dragon broke through the wall with its paws. He sat down on the broken wall and watched for a short amount of time in front of everyone, after which he screamed sharply. Marion and Dort watched with the others. The girl worriedly wondered if they had been personally visited by an ancient dragon, and the man replied that it was very exciting. Marion asked the man if he had informed anyone about the coming of the dragon. Dort agreed, adding that he had contacted everyone he could and asked for help. After that, I asked the girl about the success on her side, whether it was possible to find someone with her. She replied that she had done everything she could, but there were some problems. She said that Kohaku had personally gone to get reinforcements, but because there was no time, none of the high-level warriors would be able to get there in time. Therefore, Marion concluded that only she and Dort could somehow protect the city. Dort Kaufman clarified with her that she was suggesting stalling for time until the main forces had gathered, and reminded her that although he was wounded, he was still an ancient dragon. Marion replied that they had no choice, because otherwise the city would be finished, and their resistance will somehow be able to delay him. The warriors marched in front of them, shouting that they needed to keep up the formation. The dragon attacked them, and they hit the rocks. Marion chuckled and wondered if that would really delay him. And then she dismissed the thought with a chuckle, because the ancient dragon could easily break through their magical defenses and finish off several first-class fighters with one blow. However, of course, there are advantages to everything, such as the fact that the hospital is just around the corner, and at least this way they will have fewer losses. Dort remembered that he had seen an ancient dragon before during the Great War. It's been a long time, but he hasn't changed a bit. Marion asked him where all the adventurers were now. Kaufman said that he was sure that there would be those nearby who would agree to help, but it would take time, so now they had to do something on their own. Marion said emphatically that before the city was destroyed, they had to figure out how to stop it. Then she stretched out her hand with the blade and said that its weak point was the neck, so she would try her best to reach it. Dorn also resolutely folded his arms and noted that he was not called a merchant soldier in the war, so he would help her. Marion smiled and said that in that case they would go on the attack together. Kaufman replied that as the head of the greatest merchant guild, he would protect his city. Meanwhile, in the forest, the captain of the hero squad said that they were urgently returning to the city. The companion replied that she hoped they would make it, but Axel told them to wait. Sige was surprised and shouted that they didn't have time to wait, asking if he understood that. The captain continued that no matter how scary and dangerous this dragon was, it was their hometown, so they had to protect it. But Axel replied that Sieg simply did not understand him, because he was saying that there was a way to get to the city much faster, after which he turned to Baselia with a request. The girl closed her eyes and lovingly replied that she understood, addressing the guy as her husband. The girl then used reincarnation, turning into her true form. The hero squad was very shocked, and Axel told them to jump in because they can't waste a minute of time because people's lives are at stake. Sig asked Axel if they needed to jump in, and the adventurer next to him asked if anyone else seemed a little familiar with this dragon. The girl shouted that this was the same dragon princess that the nameless dragon knight had tamed. Sig was surprised and couldn't believe it. He asked Axel if he was the dragon knight. The guy agreed and dumped a bunch of papers out of his bag. Then he turned around and said that he had made room for them. Sieg excitedly asked if he was going to carry them inside the bag. Axel, in turn, explained to them that there was only one Baselia, and they couldn't all fit in. Therefore, this is the only way for everyone to fit in, and also assured them that they don't have to worry, because they have enough air and they won't suffocate, and from the inside it looks like a small room, even though it will be cramped. The squad was speechless, but Axel added that he had personally checked everything, and in addition, even if they were sitting inside, they would be able to communicate freely. This way, they will be able to discuss strategy. Sieg, perplexed, asked what strategy he had in mind. Axel explained that although this does not apply to the task, however, they are dealing with an ancient dragon, so they will have to postpone their main task of exterminating the demon and defeat it first. And for these purposes, they urgently need a plan. The dragon was rampaging through the City of Stars at this moment. Marion was injured and sat on the ground with a heavy panting, holding the wound with her hand. She turned around and said that this ancient dragon was huge, fast, and deadly, and it looks like death itself. The girl didn't know what to do, so her hands were shaking. She sat right in front of the screaming dragon and said it was too strong. It was a miracle to her that they hadn't died yet. She lowered her head down and closed her eyes. Marion knew that if they didn't do something, there would be no one to save. No residents, no guards. At that moment, a man flew next to the girl, crashing his back into the rocks. She turned around and looked at the rocks he had crashed into. From under them came a voice that called the girl. Then the man picked up the stone. It was Dort Kaufman. He said he seemed to be the only one still fighting him. Marion was very glad that he was alive, even though he had broken his arm and a couple of ribs. Dort replied that the dragon had scratched him a little while he was trying to get to his neck, and as for his arm, he still had a second one. Then he turned to the girl, asking if she was alive. She fell to the ground and lay there. When he saw her condition, he offered to retreat, because they were not the last people in the city, so they should not die. Marion took up the land and said that since she was a representative of the Transportation Guild, she was obligated to do everything to protect this city. Then she started to get up, saying that she had to distract the dragon until reinforcements arrived. Standing up, she said that was why she just couldn't escape. Dort grinned and said that she was right, and he would be with her until the very end. He said emphatically that he would protect his subordinates and clients. Marion readied her blade, and then she shouted that they should do their best. But at that moment, someone shouted at them to stop. The ancient dragon began to approach them, and the girl was surprised that he was staring at them. Then, turning her head, she noticed the injured people nearby. She excitedly shouted that he had already killed everyone and they had to stop him. Dort supported her, saying that there were wounded and civilians behind them. Meanwhile, the dragon began to scream, opening its mouth. Marion and Dort tensed, looking at him in fright. They jumped back, covering their heads with their hands, and the dragon flew up over the city of stars. After that, Marion crashed into a stone with her back, flying away from the flap of her wings, and began to think that nothing would work out between them, and she was a bad fighter. The girl was saddened that she couldn't do anything. She reached for her blade. The dragon continued to scream, and the girl, taking the blade, stood up and shouted resolutely that he would not devour her so easily. At that moment, the dragon arrow skill sounded, and the girl saw the guy who attacked the dragon. It was Axel who arrived on a dragon and used a skill. He landed on the ground nearby. After that, he said that he had successfully completed the task of the highest difficulty and returned safely. Dort and Marion were surprised and shouted the guy's name, and he took off his glasses with a smile after flying on a dragon and told them to move away. The ancient dragon continued to scream, and Axel said it was his turn to play with it. Axel ran up to Dort and Marion and grabbed the girl by the shoulders, checking her condition. Then he looked into his eyes and said that he was glad that he had made it, and it was good that they were still alive. Marion was surprised and flattered by the guy's words, looking into his eyes and not knowing what to say. Dort called out to Axel and asked why he was here. He was surprised because he had a mission in the primeval forest. He said he had brought a small gift and reached for his bag, pulling it out. Then he said that he was asking to get out of it. The bag stretched and people started coming out. Kaufman and Marion were surprised, and the hero squad came out with a smile, saying that they were very seasick inside. Sig was the last to leave and said that they got there very quickly, although the road was tiring, but he still had plenty of strength. The squad approached the combatants and began to carry them away. They protested, asking what they were doing. The adventurers explained that they were taking them to a safe place. Sieg said that along the way, they made a plan for their squad to help the wounded, while they decided to leave the dragon for Axel. The guy looked at the ancient dragon, and then I asked Baselia if she was ready. The girl in the form of a dragon agreed and said she would protect him. Axel said that now that the transport bag is empty, you can use a couple of old spells. The guy was nostalgic because he hadn't seen the ancient dragon for a long time. It brought back memories. Axel took out his sword and said that even though he had changed his profession, he would have to do the same thing. Apparently, their paths will never part, no matter what profession the guy chooses. All he needs to do is take advantage of his experience as a dragon knight and just do his job. He said that the dragon understood everything correctly, namely that he had come to put an end to his atrocities. After that, he pulled his sword arm back and shouted about the transfer of the past. The guy aims at the dragon and then uses the dragon god's sword spell. Meanwhile, Zig's companion said that she was done with the regeneration field, so everything will be fine now. She addressed the wounded and said that they would instantly get back on their feet under the influence of this field. Sieg also said that they would go look for those who did not manage to evacuate in time and take them to a safe place. After that, he waved his hand and said that he would leave the rest to Mrs. Baselia. The dragon girl replied that she understood. She confirmed that she would protect everyone, just as they said. Dorth Kaufman was surprised and asked if she was really Baselia. The girl remembered that they had never seen her in such a form. She used a transformation, turning back into a girl. The head of the merchant guild was surprised that she had become human by looking at the girl, because the fact that it's really her means that Axel was the faceless dragon knight. After all, Baselia had always been his only true companion. The girl was surprised by these words. She didn't expect Dort to know about his husband's previous job. Kaufman replied that, of course, he knew. However, he was not sure that Axel was really him, because no one had previously known his identity. Therefore, Dort clarified whether everything was exactly fine. Baselia asked uncomprehendingly about what was wrong. The man explained that Axel was a dragon knight, so he had to fight the dragon, which was her. The girl replied that this was not the case. Baselia said that he had made 2 mistakes, so she would fix it. The first mistake is that her husband is now a porter. Dort was surprised and asked that then she should help him in battle. The girl replied that this was the second mistake. He didn't understand one thing, namely that Baselia's husband, Axel, is stronger than she is. She smiled as she said those words. Kaufman didn't understand what exactly she meant, and the girl just told him to look. Axel jumped up high and swung his sword at the wounded ancient dragon, destroying the City of Stars. After that, he delivered a sweeping blow with his sword, causing a serious wound to the ancient dragon. Baselia stood next to Dort and said that he was fighting there, and she was helping him here, because if she approached him, she would only get in the way. Dort was surprised how a dragon could interfere. The girl said that the fact is that the very essence of the profession of a dragon knight is not to fight with dragons. He must be a full-fledged hunter of them, in other words, an executioner. The girl smiled and said that even though her husband couldn't fight at full strength right now, even so, this dragon wasn't his opponent. Baselia was sure of it, not a bit doubtful. The dragon started screaming after receiving a severe sword wound, and the guy continued to wield his sword. Axel told the dragon not to twitch, otherwise it would hurt even more, continuing to inflict damage on him. He then used the dragon's claw and jumped back after the attack to dodge the dragon. After landing on the ground, the guy shouted that his opponent had finally exposed himself, and he used the dragon bite skill to critically wound the dragon. Standing on the ground again, the guy began to look at the dying dragon. He, in turn, was trying to recover. Axel apologized to him, adding that he would never heal such a wound. The dragon once again shouted at the top of his voice. Axel was unhappy that he dared to growl at him. Then he said it looked like it was over for him, waving away his weapon. And then he used the dragon god's skill. Large black wings made of magic appeared behind his back. Axel felt nostalgic because he had once hunted dragons just to somehow dispel boredom. It was a kind of useful experience for the current circumstances. He smiled and said it was time for them to finish. Axel said goodbye to the ancient dragon, who began to scream, gathering his last strength to launch an attack. But he didn't have time to strike it, because the guy used the skill of overthrowing the dragon god. The group of heroes, Dort and Marion, were shocked as they watched the guy fight with the dragon, and Baselia, in turn, looked admiringly at her husband with a smile and love. The ruined city. The ancient dragon that destroyed it was defeated by Axel. The guy exhaled and wiped his face, saying that the battle was over and the task was completed. He was glad that they had made it in time. Otherwise, the dragon would have destroyed the whole city. So the guy smiled. At that moment, Marion ran up to him, calling his name. Axel smiled as she ran up to him, and the girl hugged him in turn. He asked if she was okay because she was covered in bandages, like a mummy. The girl was embarrassed and nodded. Marion pulled back and said that everything was fine. She got off with just a couple of scratches. In addition, the Starlight members provided her with timely assistance. The girl's body was covered with bandages. She said that Kaufman had been patched up too. Axel looked back and saw a group of people with him. After that, he smiled and said that he was glad that no one was particularly badly hurt. Marion smiled and said that it was actually thanks to him that they were able to manage without losses. The girl thanked him, bowed her head with a smile, and then said that there was a special reward for such a thing. Then she corrected herself, embarrassed by her words, and clarified that they would thank him properly. Mehedia. A few days later, Axel and the girls were sitting on an expensive sofa in a luxurious room. The girls looked at him in embarrassment, but the guy didn't understand what was going on and looked back at them. Then he asked if he had anything on his face. The girls were shaking and said that wasn't the point. After which, they drank from a glass and asked if he was a faceless dragon knight after all. They immediately explained that they were not 100% sure. However, when they saw him in battle with the dragon, everything fell into place. But in that case, they didn't understand why he became a porter. Axel replied that he would like to find out for himself. After getting drunk, the girl leaned on his shoulder, and the guy started talking with a smile. that after defeating the Demon King, he was forced to quit his job as a Dragon Knight. Across from them sat Baselia, who was eating in silence, glaring at the girls next to Axel with a slight malice. The cook offered them some more. Then Axel turned around and said that they themselves knew what profession they had given him instead. The girls were shocked. The guy was surprised by their reaction and asked about what strange he said. Marion, hearing the guy's words, asked in a raised voice if Axel thought it was better not to tell such a story. After all, it is not customary to disclose such information about oneself. The cook kept offering more. Marion insisted that people don't usually talk about changing such an important profession. Axel took a supplement from the cook, and then he said that maybe the girls were right. Marion exhaled and replied that even though he was a faceless dragon knight, he would always remain their favorite porter. Then she took out a box and said that maybe it was too corny, but she wanted to give it as a gift. There was a ring inside the box. The girl explained that it was a ring that confirmed that he was an S-class member of the Sagittarius Guild. They, the Transport Guild, have recognized his skills and are bestowing the ring as a token of their appreciation. Axel's incredible abilities have helped him achieve such heights. Baselia and the cook blushed at the sight, and the girl noticed that this gift might seem a little strange. However, as long as he's wearing it, no one will doubt his abilities as a porter. Baselia didn't know what to say. Marion also said that although she doesn't know what his future path will be, he can always use it as a basis for getting a job. Axel was amazed by this and asked if he was really worthy of it. The girl confirmed with a smile, and the other one, who was sleeping on his lap, woke up. Marion once again congratulated Axel on his promotion. The girl further adds that a porter like him will never be out of work. Baselia ran up to him with a smile and hugged him tightly while the others sat next to him. The City of Stars, rebuilt by humans after a dragon attack. Baselia and Axel watched as people carried materials for construction. Marion came up to them and told them that they had a new assignment. The heroes turned to her. Then she said that the path, to put it mildly, would be far from close. They had to go to the City of Water to support the squad of fighters. Axel smiled and said that he just wanted to go there because he wants to taste the local seafood, as they say they are very tasty. The girl asked if he was going to come back as soon as he was done with this assignment. Axel didn't answer, but started checking his bag for food, money, and the Dragon Knight's weapons just in case. After confirming that everything was in place, he and Baselia smiled and said they were ready to leave. Dorth Kaufman said that Axel is a tough guy, so he will be fine. Next to him, Marion agreed with the man's words and said she would miss him. Kaufman also said it was a strange feeling that their flying carrier was leaving the city, and he added that he shouldn't be discouraged anyway, because this is a new adventure for him. The guy thanked them and said that he did not think he would return to the City of Stars, but they would probably meet again. Then Axel thanked them with a smile on his face for taking care of him. He said that they had sheltered him, a man who had just received a profession and understood little about it. Kaufman replied with a smile that he had already repaid the debt, and Marion thanked him for dealing with the ancient dragon. Dort said that even if it was a little out of place, he should still take the bag he held out. He said that it was the proceeds from the sale of the scales of an ancient dragon that he had defeated. Axel replied that it was not worth giving it to him because it was too much. Kaufman asked what he was talking about because he saw nothing wrong with receiving a well-deserved award. Besides, he has enough money to rebuild the city himself, reminding the guy who he is. Although the battle had caused a lot of destruction, but thanks to the dragon's body, there was enough money for everything. In any case, Dort wants to give him a percentage of the sales, and if Axel doesn't mind, he can open an account with the Gemini Guild. Kaufman will transfer funds there. Axel replied that he did not know that Dort was doing such a thing, and he needed to think about this proposal. Kaufman replied that he understood and handed over the card to confirm his identity. If he signs with a magic pen, he can use it. Dort also took Axel's hand and stamped it with a pen, saying that it was a sign of belonging to the twins. He also explained that even if he didn't give him any power or unlimited possibilities, he did confirm the guy's incredible abilities. Their country is proud of the Gemini and Sagittarius guilds, as they are one of the main guilds closest to God, one of the 12 divine guilds. And Axel has achieved the recognition of 2 at once, so it doesn't matter which city he goes to or which guild he decides to join, they won't dare refuse. The guy looked at the ring on his hand in surprise, saying that he understood, and thanked them. Then he turned around and said that it was time for him to start the task. He and Baselia would go through the northwest gate. After that, he said goodbye, but Marion asked him to stop and said that there was one thing. Namely, they are going together with Axel and Baselia. They also received a request. Marion and Kaufman were very surprised when they saw him. He embarrassed them a lot. However, the point is not important, because the most important thing is that they are on their way. Marion and Dort were smiling. Axel looked at the request and said with some confusion that it really looked a little strange. The guy questioned whether it was a request from them. It was written on the leaflet that it was a client commercial guild. Marion confirmed, but added that she did not know why they were needed, because they still need to rebuild the City of Stars. Kaufman said that it would be a shame for him to part like this, so he would walk with them to a town halfway to the City of Water. And when they get there, they'll have a good snack, because he knows a good place. Axel and Baselia smiled and said that would be great. In this case, Marion suggested that they walk together, and also that she was counting on Axel. The guy grinned and told them not to doubt that he would do his job. Baselia smiled and told Axel that it looked like the road was going to be fun. The guy agreed and said that he thinks that his profession as a porter is not so bad. After a while, the guy in the hood said that he was tasked with helping this city with an ancient dragon. However, when he saw how the city was being built, he said that they seemed to have done it themselves. He went inside and said that the news of his attack had even reached the royal capital, and he was ready to leave. However, suddenly the news came that the problem had already been solved, which shocked everyone. The message said that thanks to Axel Grant, the porter, the situation was resolved as soon as possible. Everyone couldn't believe these words. The guy said that he was really an amazing person, even though his profession had changed. A little time has passed. The guy got to the door and asked if Axel was there, but when the door was opened to him and they asked him what he wanted, the guy was surprised and politely asked who it was. The person who answered the door said that she was Kohaku from the Sagittarius Transportation Guild, working with Axel. He's a valuable newbie that she looked after while he was working for them. The guy was surprised and asked if Axel worked for one of the 12 divine guilds. Kohaku was glad that he had heard about them, and the guy replied that thanks to his profession he had learned a lot about the famous guilds of this country. He also added that Axel was not expected to do anything less, although there are few transport guilds in their country, but he was able to join the most elite. Kohaku nodded and said that Axel had helped them so much that even the tongue would not turn to call him a novice, and this city was saved thanks to him, so as a thank you, she decided to look after his house. The girl then asked in surprise if the guy in front of her was the hero of the Holy Sword. The guy apologized for not introducing himself right away and said that he was Fang, the hero of the Holy Sword and Axel's friend. Kohaku was surprised that he was a friend and said it was an honor to meet him. Sheepishly, Fang replied that it was for him too, and he couldn't have imagined that such a sweet lady would live with him. Then he asked if Axel was at home. The girl replied that he was not there because he was currently running an errand. That's why he's gone to the City of Water now, and he won't be back for a while. This shocked Fang. He raised his voice and asked in what sense he had gone to the City of Water. Kohaku asked what was wrong with that. The guy asked if she was sure that he had gone there. Kohaku nodded uncertainly. Fawn said that everything would probably be fine. However, if he meets with one witch, then trouble can happen. He was wondering if he could handle it. A hero of blood magic, she was possessed by the faceless dragon knight Axel. Then Fang turned around and said that he still had time, so he should hurry to the City of Water. A bonus. I changed my profession from a dragon knight to a porter. Axel said that Mrs. Kohaku will be in charge of his place while they complete the task. Baselia said with a smile that she had changed her profession from a porter to a housewife, but for some reason the characters rely on her. Axel put his hand on the girl's shoulder and said he was counting on her, and she replied that she would try. But Baselia imagined how difficult it was for Kohak to handle the maid's job, so she spilled the water while cleaning and said she was very nice, and Axel added that he was uncomfortable. Meanwhile, in the hero's journey, Baselia was glad that they had organized a delicious outdoor lunch because they had not eaten together for a long time. Kaufman agreed and said he was surprised that the food remained fresh during the hike. After taking out the food and not having time to start eating, their attention was attracted by monsters who decided to attack them. Kaufman added that he was more impressed by how Axel dealt with the trolls who appeared during the meal. He stabbed them and returned, offering to continue lunch. The man said he didn't feel like it anymore. He also added that he would like Axel to accompany him while he dealt with the affairs of his guild. Marion added that these are dreams, and she said that after such a delicious lunch, she was overwhelmed with energy. Axel said that he and his friends used to go camping a lot, and it happened that he was responsible for cooking, and such an experience, as they say, is not wasted. Marion was surprised that Axel was cooking, even though he was a dragon knight. Baselia confirmed the guy's words, saying that he always took care of her and cooked for them. The guy said that the fate of those who are the only ones in the group who can cook is hard. He thought about how it seemed to him then that such an experience would not be useful to him anywhere. Baselia was embarrassed, but the guy decided that this experience was not superfluous after all. Marion called out to the people and asked if they felt like they were getting stronger and stronger. Baselia said that she also feels that her body is getting lighter. Kaufman also agreed. Marion asked Axel if he had added any medicinal potions or herbs to the dishes. The guy asked if she had them, and Baselia noticed that his skill table was shining. Axel was surprised to say that it was true, thinking about how long it had been since he had looked into it. The acquired skill of preserving magic and healing means preserving 100% of the medicinal and magical properties in the products. Apparently, the effect of the skill is that the products retain their magical and healing properties. Marion was surprised by this skill. Axel asked her if this was a common skill for a porter, and she replied that she had never heard of it. She remembers that some cooks and healers seem to have similar skills. However, it is important that porters acquire similar skills. Kaufman thought about it and said that there was no doubt, because they could feel its effect. They were told that the ingredients used by Axel were fresh vegetables, which are Hoshi no Miyako's signature feature, grown on land rich in magical power. Therefore, we can conclude that they did not lose this very power during the cooking process, and they got it in full. Marion replied that she did not think that eating Axel would give them such an influx of strength. She also said that she had never seen such abilities among porters. And Kaufman replied that he did not think that Axel, the porter, would have the ability. This ability is greatly desired by all members of the Culinary Guild. Kaufman lit up at these words, and he added that, besides, Axel has outstanding taste and skill. Baselia was glad to hear that. And she said that it turns out that her husband is just a porter, and now he is also a cook who will always feed her delicious food everywhere. Axel replied that she was very embarrassing to him, but he was grateful to everyone for such pleasant words. Then he looked down and said that it turned out that now their food would be of better quality and tastier. He did not expect to get a new skill, and even such a useful one, so he was glad for it. After all, you can now carry fresh food with you without loss of quality and properties, and even with the preservation of useful properties, such as treatment. Some time has passed. The heroes have arrived in the city. Kaufman was surprised to say that they had already arrived, and it was not even noon yet. Axel agreed, saying it turned out pretty quickly. Kaufman asked him if he knew that if you left the City of Stars early in the morning, you could only get here by nightfall, and Marion thought that they had significantly accelerated due to his abilities. The man then said that he would leave them for a while, as he needed to sort out some business, and apologized for the fact that they couldn't go with him. Then he was surprised to see a guy in the distance. They noticed that that scout from the guild seemed to have something to say. Dort said that he would leave for now, and later they would meet here, and they could take a walk and find out about the City of Water if they were interested. Baselia was delighted, but Axel agreed and asked Marion if she would go with them to the City of Water. The girl agreed, saying that she had business at the headquarters of the Maritime Guild, so she would go with them. Axel was surprised by the Maritime Guild when he found out who was running the water in the city after her words. The headquarters of the Transportation and Merchant Guilds were located in the City of Stars. There also seemed to be a branch of the Guild of Magicians, so it makes sense that the headquarters of the Maritime Guild is located in the City of Water. Marion explained that it was because the City of Water is located by the sea, and in this city there are various crafts related to it, like the Guild of Shipbuilders and Fishermen. Marion remembered and said that there was also a pirate guild. Baselia was surprised by these words, and she imagined how a pirate could grab her and start touching the girl. She wouldn't be very happy about that. Axel thought it was really strange that such a guild was allowed to exist, but on the other hand, there are similar guilds in all cities. The guy thought about how amazing the variety was as the girl continued to imagine various scenes and hold the guy's hand. Marion said that guilds are made up of professionals in their field, hence the uniqueness. Then the girl said that she knows a restaurant with very tasty food, so they go there when they get to the City of Water. Axel thought about seafood, and Baselia happily exclaimed that Marion was talking about delicious food. The girl told her that she knows many such places in different cities, so they can ask whenever they want. While the girls were chatting, Kaufman called out to Axel, saying that they seemed to have problems. The men stepped aside, and Kaufman explained. Axel asked about the attack of the demonic beasts. The man replied that it didn't look like it was their business, and they said that a strange flood had recently occurred. It was because of him that the bridge collapsed. Kaufman added that they also say it will take more than a dozen days to recover. Marion could not believe such horror, because it was the only safe road to the City of Water, and now it is inaccessible. Dort said that there was another way around, but it was very dangerous because of the large number of demonic beasts. Marion thought about how she wouldn't want to walk on him. Axel and Baselia exchanged glances, and then the guy asked that this was the whole problem. After all, it wasn't her for them. Then he asked if they had ever flown on a dragon. Marion, I remembered that Axel is a former dragon knight and Baselia is a dragon. Axel said that they immediately planned to ride Baselia in the shape of a dragon. They had walked all the way here to make sure they reached the City of Water, as it was a long way from the City of Stars. And thanks to the new abilities of the porter, he managed to increase Baselius's reserve of strength. However, there is still no point in taking risks if it is possible to get from this place without strain. Axel said that it was a little dangerous to fly at night in the dark, so they planned to stay here until tomorrow, but since it was still far from dark, they could leave now. Marion agreed, asking why not, because they still have a lot of strength, so they can go on the road. Axel replied that, in that case, if everyone was ready, they could fly right now. Kaufman apologized for the suddenness, but he still had things to do, so he had to stay. Axel said he understood, and asked Baselia to begin the transformation. The girl nodded, and she used the skill of reincarnation, taking on the real form of a dragon in front of everyone. Kaufman noticed that he hadn't seen Baselia's dragon form for a long time, and it was very beautiful. The dragon was glad that she was complimented, but that's because her husband polished her scales, for which she is grateful. Axel said he thought she was very pretty without it, stroking the girl. Then he took out his bag and opened it in front of Marion, apologizing and asking her to stay in it during the flight. The girl replied that she would agree even in a potato sack, because the chance to fly on a dragon comes once in a lifetime. She continued that even if she has to fly in a bag, she is very glad that she got this opportunity because she is incredibly lucky to fly on such a strong dragon. Axel said that, of course, everything was fine, but she needed to be careful because she might shake a little inside. When Marion reached into the bag, the guy straddled the dragon and told Baselia that they could fly. The girl in the form of a dragon flapped her wings and said that they were leaving. Axel asked if Marion was okay inside the bag, and the girl replied that she was a little shocked, but nothing critical. The guy said he understood, and in that case, they can speed up. The girl screamed at this. Axel had warned her that she was going to start shaking even more, so she needed to be careful. The girl was shocked that she would shake even harder than she was now, holding on to the walls. Axel confirmed her words and assured the girl that the bag would take over part of the load. But it's still pretty hard, so she needs to hold on. The girl grabbed it. And I noticed that there was no shaking, thinking that it was finally over. But meanwhile, Axel put on his glasses and told Baselia to start the flight. The dragon flew up. Marion inside the shipping bag started screaming as she flew over the City of Water. Kaufman looked at the people flying away and said that Baselia, the dragon princess, is very beautiful in flight. Her speed and grace are special, and you can look at it endlessly. Axel on Baselia, in the shape of a dragon, flew over a city adjacent to the sea, on which a large number of ships sailed. They asked if this was the City of Water. The guy jumped off the dragon, and it landed. He looked into the bag and told Marion that they were there. The girl in the bag said she was very sick. Axel told her to come out as soon as she regained consciousness, because they had already arrived. It was the first time he had to go on such a long journey as a porter. The guy stretched and warmed up, thinking that he was glad that they had succeeded, but his strength was already beginning to leave. He said that, after all, it's hard to overcome such a path without skills and experience alone. When he was a dragon knight, he had enough skills to allow him and Baselia to make such trips. However, now that he has become a porter, he mostly has to rely on his own capabilities. And thanks to the transfer of the past, he has the opportunity to use old skills, but these limitations tire him very much. Baselia, who turned back into a girl, said she was very sorry because she would like to adapt to him more. However, she is too strong, and it is obvious that her speed will be much higher than his current capabilities. The girl sadly lowered her head and said that she didn't have enough practice, so it was a bit difficult. The guy noticed that Baselia, who is usually very cheerful, hung her nose again. This had happened before during the war with the Demon King. He hugged the girl and hugged her to him. After that, he said that everything was fine and asked if the fact that she was very strong and fast was a reason for sadness. Besides, even though he's not as strong as before, he's already used to the girl. Therefore, he told the girl that there was no reason for her to be sad, looking into her eyes and stroking her head. Baselia smiled happily and said she understood, closing her eyes and clinging to him. Then the girl pulled back and, holding her arms up, shouted that the cheerful Baselia was back. Axel said he was glad to hear that, pleased with her previous attitude. Marion got out of the bag and said that they really were in front of the sea, beyond which the city of water could be seen. She was surprised, because recently they had been separated by huge cities, gazing at the landscape with fascination. The heroes stood in front of the city of water. Axel confirmed that he wasn't joking and they were really there. Marion said it wasn't that she didn't believe him. She just still can't accept the fact that they flew so fast a distance that usually takes days to cover, so she thinks she's probably dreaming and dreaming about it all. But after rubbing her eyes, she realized that she really wasn't sleeping. Axel thought it was a funny reaction. He thought that it seemed like they all needed to rest and drink some kind of recovery potion. Marion smiled and offered to go to the city, and the guy and Baselia agreed with her. Axel said he was looking forward to going to a local restaurant. Baselia also confirmed it, and she said that her stomach was already dreaming of trying all their delicious dishes and desserts. However, we need to finish the job first. The heroes began to cross the bridge into the city. The guy said he was glad it had ended badly, and Baselia said the receptionist had been very taken aback. Some time ago, a branch of the Gemini Guild, the receptionist said they were informed that the bridge on the way out of the City of Stars was broken. Therefore, she wondered how they were able to come to the city in this case. Axel looked at Baselia and, after choosing the right words, replied that it was through the air. The people inside the guild saw a guy with a girl and couldn't believe it was a flying porter. They began to discuss that the flying porter is a myth, but it really exists. Another heard that they only moved out this morning, so it's incredible how they got there so quickly. The rumor that he is faster than the rain of stars may be true. Axel offered to finish the package anyway. The Gemini Guild administrator agreed and thanked them for their guild's help. Axel replied that since they had finished their business, it was time to eat. Baselia was glad of that. Marion said they should go then, because she had already booked a table at the restaurant she had told them so much about. After a short amount of time, the Pirate Inn, a large building with 2 floors next to the sea. Axel was surprised that the sign said Pirate Inn, and Baselia remembered again. She thought about how the pirates would grab her and start touching her with their hands, exclaiming joyfully about it. Axel also said that he hoped that nothing would be done to them in it. Baselia was trembling beside him. Marion laughed at their reaction and opened the door for them inside, saying it didn't matter that the name was a little scary, because it's actually a very pleasant place. The heroes went inside the restaurant. They were greeted by a girl with short hair and long ears. She said she was glad to see Marion, as she always was. The bonus, Baselia's strange fantasies. The dragon princess imagined how they would grab her and put pads on her hands. But suddenly Axel comes and wounds the pirates with a sword. Baselia is very happy about him, and the pirates ask for mercy. Standing up, the girl hugs the guy and says that she loves her husband, because even in fantasies you can rely on him. A little earlier, right after the flight. As soon as the heroes arrived at the City of Water and Baselia turned back into a human, Axel asked about what happened and why she was blushing. The girl replied that she had heard strange noises from Marion, and the rest was drawn by her fantasy, namely what they were doing there. Axel replied that he would exercise his right to remain silent. The main story. Marion replied that they had not seen the owner of the Pirate Inn for a long time. She, in turn, replied that it was so, and she prepared food and a room for them. The heroes came closer to her. The hostess of the hotel said with a smile that everything was done in the best possible way, and Axel asked who she was. Marion replied that she was the head of the institution, namely, the owner of the Pirate Inn, and concurrently the head of one of the 12 divine guilds, the Accord Maritime Guild. The girl introduced herself, saying that her name was Ryuukishi. Then she smiled brightly and said that Marion had already told everything for her, and that Marion also talked about Axel, the flying porter. The guy smiled. They shook hands, and Rairaku expressed the hope that they would get along. Axel replied that he was looking forward to working with her. Rairaku also shook hands with Baselia, who also replied that she was pleased to meet you. Axel noticed that it was surprising that in addition to the guild, she also manages the hotel. Rairaku said that people are often surprised by this, and she explained that it was just her hobby, nothing more, because there weren't many places like this before, so she decided to start an institution for pirates. Over time, more and more people began to learn about this place, and therefore now not only pirates come to this place. Axel understood why this place was called the Pirate Inn. He replied to the owner that it was an interesting story. Rairaku agreed and came closer to him. She looked into his eyes and said that he was even better than she had imagined, and confessed that she had never been with such a handsome man. Baselia and Marion were shocked by these words, but the guy just smiled. Rairaku said that it was noticeable for Marion because she talked about him with passion and fire in her eyes. The guy was also shocked by these words, and the girl summed up that that was why she was even interested too and asked to introduce them. The guy looked at Marion, and Baselia hugged him. Rairaku patted the dragon princess and said she was glad to meet them. Then she walked away and said that she had to get back to work and the guests should sit down because their lunch would be ready soon. After that, the girl asked the chefs if they were ready, to which they agreed in unison. Baselia looked at them and noticed that Rairaku was a great boss, and Axel agreed, adding that he even felt uneasy, looking at how she handles it all. Then Axel looked at Marion and thanked her. The girl reminded them that they had saved the City of Stars, so she couldn't help but tell them about it. Looking out the window, Marion continued that even if he stays in this city or leaves here, she thought that there was nothing wrong with him getting new connections, and if she talked to Rairaku, she would most likely be happy to take him to the Marine Guild. Axel thought that if he needed a job, he would just have to talk to her. Marion also said that she hadn't lied, that this place was the best in town, and they could eat as much as they wanted. And after lunch, they can spend the night in the room upstairs. She handed the heroes the key, and she told me that she had booked it while they were on business at the Merchant Guild. Axel told her that she always treats them very well and helps them, both in the City of Stars and here, so he is very grateful to her. Then she added that she had said that she would help them until the very end, and this was only a small part of what she had promised. After a while, the heroes went to their room and went to bed, but in the middle of the night, Axel got up. Baselia asked where he was going, and the guy got dressed, took the keys, and said he decided to take a walk, asking if she wanted to go with him. The girl replied that she would be happy to go. She got up and also put on her outerwear. They left the room, and Axel began to study the newspapers. No matter how many days they stay in the city, it doesn't matter what they're here for. Baselia took the guy's hand, before silently extending her own. The heroes should study everything properly. They walked down a narrow alley, taking the first step towards this goal. Axel and Baselia did not climb a small hill, which offered an incredibly beautiful view of the city. After some time, the heroes moved on. They walked to the middle of the bridge, and Baselia noticed that, unlike the City of Stars, there were a lot of rivers in this one. And that's why it seems to her that all the inhabitants of the City of Water are moving through the water. Axel replied that they were just going about their business. And it seems to him that the river they are standing over can be jumped without any problems, and it also seems that, if anything, they have to jump more than in the City of Stars. Meanwhile, life is in full swing at the port. Cargo ships come and go one by one. Axel turned to Baselia, holding out his hand to her, and said that he had seen enough, so he was satisfied and called the girl home. Extending her hand, Baselia accepted and agreed to go home. A short time later, they entered a pirate inn, and we heard someone asking, in a raised voice, how they had forgotten to load it onto a cargo ship. She also asked if she needed to check them every time because of this. The man apologized to the boss. Axel and Baselia looked in, and the owner, seeing them, said that they had not arrived on time. After that, she apologized for the fact that they had witnessed this scene. Axel said there was nothing wrong with that, and he asked if the conflict had started over that thing with Rairaku, because if he hurried, he had a chance to get her on the ship before it sailed. The girl smiled and thanked the guy for his initiative, but told him that even the shortest route would take at least 20 minutes. And besides all this, the forgotten thing is quite heavy, so the speed will obviously be less. Therefore, even if the ship has not yet sailed, unfortunately, she will not make it in time. And at the same time, they won't delay the departure, even if Reiraku personally asks, so she's in a desperate situation. Axel and Baselia were just smiling, and the guy said that in that case, he could do the delivery. It would be his thanks for the room, and Baselia would thank him so much for the delicious lunch. Reiraku was very surprised and began to deny their help, politely asking them to wait. She said that they were unlikely to succeed, as there were too many rivers in the city. It's going to take too long anyway, so they won't make it. Axel told the owner not to worry, because the direct route would take no more than 5 minutes. He said that he would like to run around the city of water and find out what roads it has and the like, so he would be very happy if they would allow him to make this delivery. Reiraku understood the guy's words and was flattered by how much he wanted to help her. But she asked him if it was too much, because if he just wanted to pay her back for her room and food, then they shouldn't strain themselves so much. The guy silently took the item into his transport bag and went out, only saying at the door that everything was fine. After opening it, he added that he would deliver it as soon as possible and then began to run. She and Baselia jumped over rivers and over rifttops with smiles, hurrying towards the ship. They bounced off the walls of houses and ran along the partitions until they landed on the roof and saw the target, after which they jumped back. Continuing to jump from one roof to another, Axel and Baselia flew over the river. A couple of minutes later, they arrived at the place, greatly shocking the people on the pier, who turned around and looked at them. The guy exhaled, saying that they barely made it, and took out his bag, and Baselia happily spread her arms. The man, confused and shocked, asked the heroes who they were and how they ended up here. Axel apologized for coming without a ticket and said that they had arrived with a package from the guild. Then he showed me his transport bag and asked if they were taking any more luggage for loading. The man asked him what kind of package could come from the Maritime Guild. He took this thing out of his bag with both hands and showed the letter. The man looked at the document and said that there was no doubt because there was a magic sign of the guild and the seal of the head. After that, he clarified that it needed to be loaded onto the ship. Axel agreed, and I asked him to sign the receipt. The man signed with a pen and asked if the guy was really a flying porter. The guy did not answer this question and just told them to be careful because the delivered item is quite heavy. The man asked again and grinned, saying that if the porter could lift her, then he, the old fisherman, would be able to do it. After that, he stretched out his arms to her and instantly fell from the weight, not believing in reality. Then he started shouting loudly that she was really heavy, barely standing on her feet. Axel noticed that he had warned. The guy approached him and offered to help. The old fisherman was having a hard time resting and apologized to the porter. After loading everything onto the ship, the fisherman shouted words of gratitude for their work. Axel and Baselia waved at them with smiles. The guy thought that even in the city of water, he was able to navigate without problems, using the same method as in the city of stars. At that time, Reiraku was wondering if Axel was doing well, because she was worried about whether he would be able to cope. After all, this is a very heavy burden, and he is in such a hurry to deliver it that it seems to her that at this rate she will turn gray with him. However, Marion said that he was ridiculously strong and fast, but still she doubted it. The guild worker next to her was looking through binoculars through the window and informed her that the ship was already sailing away. Reiraku spoke her thoughts aloud with worried eyes, saying that she was wondering if this was possible. At that moment, she was asked what exactly was possible. The guild employee turned around and was shocked by Axel's presence, and the girl replied that she thought it was stupid to hope that one madman would actually cross the city in 5 minutes. Then she turned around and exclaimed about where Axel and Baselia came from. Axel said that they returned after a successful mission, and his companion was having a hard time resting. Reiraku and the guild employee couldn't believe it, but Axel showed them the signed receipt. An employee of the guild turned to the head and said that it was really true, namely the signature of the captain of that ship. The girl remembered Marion's words in confusion and noticed that he was stronger and faster than she had actually told her. Although Reiraku certainly didn't doubt the story she was telling like she was possessed. However, the guild leader still finds it hard to believe. Baselia wearily leaned against the guy, hugging him. Reiraku looked at them with a smile, thinking that Marion's words were not an exaggeration because he was really incredible. The girl called out to Axel and Baselia, who were being held in her arms, and sincerely thanked them for their help. Axel replied that there was nothing wrong with that. Besides, he volunteered himself. And Baselia said that she was just accompanying her husband with a bright smile. The guild leader replied to them that there was no need to be so modest, and took out a tray. After that, she poured drinks from a jug into their glasses and handed them over, saying that she also wanted to do something for them in return that would please them. That's why she wants to invite them to a special place. A new adventure awaited the heroes. The girls asked Reiraku if they were still far away, because they were already far from the city. She replied that they were almost there. Then she told me that very narrow, who have been living in the city for a long time, know about this place. Reiraku added that it could be said to be their private beach. The girls didn't look away. The guild leader also brought some delicious food, so they can relax and have a good rest after work. Baselia exclaimed happily while Marion and Axel looked at her with a smile. The heroes began to rest. Baselia swam in the water and watched various fish underwater. Marion was sunbathing on the beach, and Reiraku was watching Axel and Baselia relaxing. After that, the girl stood up and offered to have fun, for example, to play a game. Baselia, with a piece of watermelon in her hands and Marion next to him, asked her what game she was talking about. The girl pointed her finger at the flag and said that whoever gets there first and gets it will win. The main prize will be a romantic walk with Mr. Axel. The guy looked at it indifferently, but it attracted Baselia's attention. She squeezed the watermelon so that it snapped in half. Marion ran up to Axel and said she totally agreed, hugging his hand. Then she added that she was only offering to put Axel in the place of the flag in this game, so that the one who touches it first wins. The girl touched the guy's torso. And then she asked what others thought about it. Reiraku stood quietly, unlike Baselia, who angrily broke the watermelon in her hands into 2 pieces, thereby greatly scaring Reiraku. Axel understood the girl's desire, and the dragon princess said she would show them that she was the best by carrying 2 halves of a watermelon. After that, I asked them if they were ready to lose, putting a watermelon on a tray next to it. The girls got into the starting position and were serious about winning this competition. Reiraku thought that she had to find out what kind of person Axel was. Marion thought she wanted to get closer to him, and a romantic walk would definitely help. Axel indifferently took the place of the flag and accepted their terms. Then the countdown started. The girls got into the starting position, finally getting ready to start. And after Axel's command, the girls immediately took off, scattering sand under their feet in all directions. The first was the dragon princess, whose hair was fluttering from her running speed. But the girl stumbled and screamed loudly, starting to fall, and because of this she left a trail in the sand. After stopping her fall, the girl stood up and asked about what had happened until her attention was attracted by a shadow from above. It was Marion, who had jumped over Baselia, who continued on her way to Axel. When she landed after the jump, Marion turned around and drew Baselia's attention to her superiority. Because of this, the girl remembered her goal, and Marion tried to run a little more carefully because it's hard to run on the beach. However, suddenly, Reiraku ran next to her, passing her and waving to the girl. She excused herself and rushed forward, telling Marion and Baselia that she was no stranger to running on the sand, unlike them. But when she had already stretched out her arms and almost touched Axel, Baselia and Marion stood up and shouted at her not to jump to conclusions. They ran to Axel incredibly quickly and also held out their arms in front of them. But the guy's attention was attracted by a huge wave that appeared above them. He said something unexpected was about to happen. The heroes were covered by this wave when the girls only had time to shout the last words that they should win. When they woke up, they lay on the sand and exhaled heavily after the water receded. Axel said that he was not quite sure which of them had won, because all 3 of them concerned him. Some time has passed. Baselia was walking along the beach and was ready to return, but she turned around to look at the landscape once more. She said with a smile that she had a lot of fun today, after which she looked at Axel, and I asked him if he felt the same way. The guy looked at her and the wind picked up, then agreed. Baselia asked if he had seen a pleasant breeze, and Reiraku turned to Marion regarding her news. Axel replied to Baselia that it was just a swimsuit, so there was nothing to worry about, and Reiraku clarified that she had only heard about the news in general terms. The news was that giant demons were beginning to appear in the primeval forest, and the city of stars was attacked by an ancient dragon, destroying a large part of the city. Fortunately, it was defeated by Axel. The guild leader said that these were very unpleasant situations, and Marion confirmed her words. However, they were all saved by Mr. Axel. All the characters were smiling and happy at that moment. The message sent to the guild said that thanks to the efforts of the flying porter Axel Grant, the damage was extremely minor. Ryuraku noticed that, thinking about it now, it seemed to her that everything she said was true. Marion confirmed her words, saying it didn't matter if she wanted to believe it or not. The guild leader replied that she believed, as she had experienced Axel's abilities today. Marion asked if something had happened before they went to the beach. Ryuraku agreed and said that he had helped her a lot by delivering one thing to the cargo ship. The most important thing is that it was done in an impossibly short period of time. And then she said that this porter looked a bit like a former Dragon Knight, looking at Axel, and she assumed that he really could be that faceless Dragon Knight. Marion was surprised that she had guessed, and then told with a smile that it so happened that he changed his profession to a porter. Ryuraku took the news calmly, and Marion asked if she really believed it. At that moment, Baselia took a stick and wrote with it in the sand. The guild leader said that she believed in Marion's words. Baselia has finished writing an inscription that means that her husband loves her. Sitting down and looking at it joyfully, the girl was happy and laughed, thinking about him. Ryuraku said that during the war she saw Axel in action, or rather, she saw him destroying everyone left and right like a monster. Axel asked Baselia what she was doing, which made her feel embarrassed. The guild leader noticed that she couldn't remember the appearance of the Dragon Knight. Meanwhile, the water washed away Baselia's inscription. Ryuraku added that it was as if someone had erased her appearance from her memory. Baselia ran to hug Axel. The head of the guild was sure that Axel was not just a porter, because only some legendary heroes could repeat such feats. After which, the girl remembered that there was someone staying in the City of Water who also possessed similar incredible abilities. Marion was surprised that there were more heroes in this city that she didn't know about. Ryuraku confirmed and told that there is a hero of ice magic, and she thinks that Axel should not cross paths with her. At that moment, the girl in question landed in the city on the street and looked around. She exhaled and tugged at a man's collar. This man was not conscious. Ryuraku continued to explain that this girl, when she meets guys named Axel, catches them and turns them over to the guards. Marion was very surprised and asked why such cruelty had suddenly taken place, because it seemed to her that it was somehow barbaric, asking if Ryuraku felt the same way. The girl replied that maybe she trains like that and uses her powers to find the right person for her. Then she laughed nervously. She added that all the people she caught were thieves or robbers, but even so, Ryuraku saw how she did it. She looked at Axel worriedly, telling Marion that she thought he needed to be careful with his name. Then the head of the guild put her hand behind her head and said that, probably, all the heroes had heard and were well aware of Mr. Axel. Marion replied that after such a story, she gets the feeling that someone doesn't like him. The girls decided and thought together that they would never understand this heroic get-together of theirs. Marion noted that it was definitely better for her not to cross paths with Mr. Axel. At that time, Baselia asked the guy to tie a bow. Marion asked the guild leader if the ice magic hero was still in the City of Water. The girl confirmed and said that yesterday she received a message that she was chasing a merchant ship on which a fraudster was trying to escape. But she also added that they were out of town for the time being, and she hadn't even told them when they were coming back, so she thought they could win some money that way. After all, the place where Axel spent the night and his current location are also hidden. Axel doesn't really give his name away, so he's unlikely to be found. In addition, the City of Water is incredibly large, and the chances of encountering it by chance are extremely low. Axel helped tie the bow and said he was done, and Baselia thanked him. Ryuraku said she thought she should talk to Axel now. Marion agreed, and the girls approached him. Then the guild leader hugged the guy by the hand and said that if the hero of ice magic wanted to do something to him, then they will do their best to protect him. Marion hugged his other arm and confirmed that he was under reliable protection. Baselia was surprised and embarrassed by the actions of the other girls, which attracted Axel's attention, after which he ran over and hugged him from behind. The heroes returned back to the city. After a certain amount of time, Axel was sitting across from Baselia at the table, flipping through the pages. He took a few of them and said that the City of Water was not as structurally complex as the City of Stars, but it was very large, so he needed to work a little more or take a walk to remember it better. Baselia took one of the flyers and said that she had seen delicious bread being baked in this store, which is shown on the map. Axel laughed and said that this was really useful information that needed to be remembered, and praised the girl. At that moment, someone came to their door, which caused the bell to ring. It was a girl in a hood who was walking inside in high-soled shoes. Then she went to the reception desk and asked about the porter named Axel, namely, whether he was in this place now. These words caught the guy's attention. He lowered the flyers in his hands and asked what he could do for her, looking at the girl. The girl in the hood turned around and asked if he was a porter named Axel. For a moment, her eyes widened in surprise, and she viciously asked him if it was really him. She called him a pathetic porter who dared to take the name Axel. The girl took off her hood. The city of water. Meanwhile, in the guild, the employee came running in a hurry and opened the door. He called out to the guild leader, Ryuukishi, and Marion, causing the girls to turn around and look at him. The employee reported that an ice magic hero had arrived there, stuttering due to her haste. The girls were very surprised, and the head of the guild, Ryuukishi, asked what he had said. She knew that the ice magic hero had gone after the scammer yesterday, so she was surprised that she was able to return so quickly. Then she waved her hand and asked if she was already here. The employee replied that when he found out, she was already inside. The girls quickly ran there, and Marion asked who was there, asking not to tell her that it was just Axel and her. When the girls arrived at the scene, they noticed a huge layer of smoke and destroyed parts of the building. Guild leader Ryuukishi and Marion were greatly surprised by this and began to look around. In front of them was a completely black room in the guild where no one else was. They couldn't figure out what was going on here until Ryuukishi realized. Marion asked her what it was, and the head of the guild explained that this is the magical power of the hero of ice magic. Marion couldn't believe it. The girl confirmed, saying that she had seen this a couple of times. It seems to her that the power of her magic can vary depending on her emotional state. Therefore, the stronger the emotion, the stronger the magic. She had seen what she did to bad guys. Marion held her head and noticed that the emotions of the hero of ice magic seemed to be going through the roof right now. Ryuukishi replied that it probably was. Marion said that in that case they had to hurry. They opened the large door to the next room and ran inside, shouting to Axel that they had come to help him. The head of the guild asked if Axel was okay. The girls called him by his first name. However, they saw how the hero of ice magic rushed into the guy's arms and happily said that they had finally met. Ryuukishi and Marion couldn't believe what they were seeing. Axel happily said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. However, he asked her not to hang on to him so much by addressing her by the name of Saki. Baselia confirmed Axel's words, saying that she hugs his husband too tightly. But the hero of ice magic, Saki, continued to hug him tightly, saying that he smelled like a real Axel, that's it. She hung on to the guy and hugged him, happily closing her eyes while he just stood there. And then she said that even though they hadn't seen each other for several months, she still remembered him, and I noticed that the helmet's ability always cleansed his body, so the smell was very faint. It was a little annoying for the guy. Saki then said that it was wonderful that he wasn't wearing his Dragon Knight helmet right now. Because of this, she is very excited. Axel stood silently and did not bother the girl. The hero of ice magic went down to the floor and said she had to finally find out what it smelled like from below. Axel took the girl by the head and asked her not to get into his pants, which made her scream. Then she stood up and apologized, laughing softly. The guy told her that there was no need to publicly try to take the cloth off him. He reminded her that, in case she hadn't noticed, they weren't alone. The girl continued to look only at Axel. The guy said that others might misunderstand them. Marion and Ryuukishi couldn't find the words. Saki looked at them, holding on to the guy's clothes, and asked what was wrong with that. After that, she snuggled up to him once again and told him to just ignore them. She also added that he could do whatever he wanted with her, covering his eyes. The guy grinned and told her that she hadn't changed a bit since their last meeting. Marion apologized for interrupting them on the most interesting thing, and asked who the girl next to him was. Axel asked in surprise if she was referring to Saki, and then apologized for such a strange acquaintance. Then he picked her up and stretched her out on straight arms, saying that her name was Saki, and she was a hero of ice magic. The girl said that's right, and her name is Saki Liz Noir. Then she turned around and looked at Axel, saying that she was Axel's best and most beloved partner. Baselia was stunned by these words, and Saki hugged him again and said that her husband was forever in her debt. Ryuukishi and Marion didn't understand what was going on here, but Baselia laughed and said that she was a good joker, referring to the hero of ice magic, Liz Noir. Then she hugged the guy's hand and reminded her that she and Axel had been together much longer than her, and her husband had never been Saki's husband. The hero of ice magic grabbed the guy by the other hand and said with a smile that she hated jokes, turning to the dragon princess Baselia, saying that in the future her words would definitely come true. Baselia and Saki came closer to each other. The dragon princess said that it was all very interesting, but she and her husband were not up to it because things were not waiting for them. The hero of ice magic replied that she was just running away because the truth hurt her eyes. Axel and the other girls watched on the sidelines. The guy sighed and said that they always do. Then he turned around and explained to Marion and Reiraku that they were just old friends. Marion was surprised that he called them old friends. She said that the ice magic hero Saki doesn't really look like just a friend to him, referring to Axel, and the guy replied that they have a rather complicated relationship, looking at Baselia with her. At that moment, the girls were shaking hands. Saki Noir said she praises Baselia for getting so far with Axel, treating her like a lizard. The dragon princess thanked her for the compliment. Marion was surprised and said they looked good together. Axel asked if she really thought so, because he had a bad feeling about it. And then he explained that the hero of ice magic has one ability, thanks to which it can change the temperature of the environment, making it lower or higher depending on emotions. Therefore, it's time for Saki Noir to suppress the manifestation of this very power, because some people are already cold. Baselia sneezed at that moment. Then the hero of ice magic guiltily approached Marion and agreed, asking for forgiveness for not restraining herself. After that, she began to justify that she was so happy that her magical energy seemed to explode, and she had not yet learned how to control her emotions at such moments. Saki bowed as a sign of forgiveness and added that there was nothing she could do about it, because when she met Axel and smelled his scent, her mind seemed to be in a fog. The guy replied that there was nothing wrong with that, and what had happened had already passed, asking him to control himself next time. The girl hugged him and said she would do her best. Axel apologized once again, saying that this was always happening to her. The girl hugged him, and the head of the guild, Ryuukishi, said that everything was fine and they didn't need to apologize so much. After all, she happened to see how brave heroes communicate with each other, and therefore everything is in order. Axel thanked the girl, and then he turned to the hero of ice magic, asking why she had come here. He told her that they really had a lot of work to do. The girl replied with a happy smile that she had come to see Axel. Then she added that after defeating the Demon King, she hadn't smelled him for a very long time, so she was very sad and lonely. Besides, she heard that the guy had changed his profession to Dragon Knight. She said that people say he's a porter now, but she thinks it's a disguise, so she wondered what he really does. But in any case, the most important thing for Saki Noir was to meet Axel, because she wanted to talk to him about a lot of things. The guy replied that he understood her motives and prevented the girl, who had her arms around his neck, from getting closer with her hand. Then he said that the manifestation of her power creates some discomfort for others, so he thinks they should talk in a slightly less crowded place. A couple of minutes later, they moved to the table and poured tea. The guy explained everything briefly to Saki, and she understood. And then he summed up that his profession at the moment is a porter. Saki still couldn't believe it, asking if he was lying. After all, she believed that this was a profession for beginners who did not have any skills. And Saki clarified that it was all done by the gods. Axel replied that he could say that skills were not that simple, but that he was a porter, that was for sure. The ice magic hero stood up and grabbed the table with her hands. Her magic went wild, and she said she understood. And then she added that if the gods didn't want to get in touch, she would make a fuss about them and help him change his profession.